not always the case. A lot of brothers are getting married, it's not as often, but you got guys that get married right after college, some even in the military right after high school. I've seen a couple brothers like that as well. They're not in a position to be 100% or take 100% of the financial responsibility. Do you feel that that's a mistake for a man to take on that responsibility at that point in his life? Or is it okay to be at a point and be 50-50 temporarily and grow into that place as a man?
When a man chooses a woman, a man should be able to provide for that woman. Now, this doesn't mean shopping sprees and whatever you want. No, being able to keep a roof over her head, food in her mouth, clothes on her back. Now, that's just a physical. You also have to be there for emotionally. And the only way you can do that is by being there for yourself emotionally, healing from childhood traumas. You have to be there for her mentally. You have to be there for her spiritually. See, most men believe 50-50 is just income. They think providing 100% is just income, because you also have men that provide 100%. But when it comes to the woman mentally, physically, and spiritually, he isn't doing anything. And that's why the man that doesn't have money is able to get the woman of the man that does have money, because the man that didn't have money can connect with her at that emotional level.
So this is the thing, y'all. I'm hearing that, and that's empowering me. You know what I mean? I feel good to hear you say. I actually get very excited about that.
Woo! Baby, listen. Guys, welcome to Lord Blackbird 91. We had this conversation yesterday, and I thought to myself, let me grab a few people, let them come and chime in, say their piece, because I think it's a really good conversation to have. And the question we're kind of asking here is, Yada made some points here. He's basically saying if you can't provide and put a roof over her head and everything like that, yada, 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 then you shouldn't even be in a relationship, So if you can't do that for her right now, even if you came out of college and you just graduated, he said, listen, even if you come out of graduation in college, if you can't put a roof over your head, you shouldn't even be there, bro. Don't do 50-50, basically what he said, right? And so, and he said also as well, he said, hey, look, you know what? As a man, if you really got the wisdom and the vision, you should have your wife working for you in your business. Because you know what? She ain't got no dreams and she ain't got no visions. She only wants to work for you. And since you're the ultimate wisdom, surely she should choose your business as well. And to be fair, he made some good points, which I do agree with. I wonder if I'm against it because of the way it's delivered. It just sounded so beautiful. And that's when I think that's what got me. Everything was so sweet and everything was so nice. And then when you usually hear that, and this is why we're going to tussle a little bit, is because when you start hearing that, that's the Derek Jackson spiel. Right? That's for me, the pandering that starts to happen, right? When everything sounds so sweet and so nice and it tastes so delectable in the way you're saying it. I was like, yeah, he downright no, that's not how life actually is. And that's what got me, is when you start doing that. I said, something's not quite right in the milk, but I'm not saying he didn't tell some truths for me personally. You know what I mean? So if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, click on the bell button for notification of the uploads. We're about to spend the next hour or so having this conversation, because it's going to be an interesting one. I can tell you that for sure. And then maybe some more people that want to join and share their piece as well. It's going to be a tussle tonight, and I'm sure. But I'm joined by Sean at the moment, our Deacon Sean, to come and give us some different perspectives as well, and have a good conversation as well. So if you're new here, like, share, subscribe, click on the bell button for notification of the uploads. And we can't wait to hear your thoughts and your opinions. Sean, you watched the video, parts of the video. I don't know if you watched all the parts of it, but you have your own opinion as well. So let me know your opening opinion, what you thought of that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the foundation of it makes sense. From the man being the provider and, how we should go about providing in our family structures. So, I agree with the framework of what he's presenting for sure. But what has me is the cookie cutter approaches and the broad sweeping brushes of, you're a disease. If you're doing 50-50, and it's like the shaming tactics, or, just making it seem like if you don't prescribe to this exact formula of the way he's pitching it, then you don't know what you're doing. That to me is like, yeah, come on, it's not going to be a cookie cutter approach for every single person. And if they're not doing it that way, means that they're flawed. So that part I got an issue with.
And I think, you touched on something which I think I understood as well, because there was a lot of good things in there. There was a lot of good things I actually agreed with. In fact, majority of the message I actually agreed with. I think, just like we say about the Derek Jackson thing, is almost like a little bit of a yeast leavens the bread. And it's just like, it's like that, like you just said, it's that shaming tactic. And that's what told me that he's not being all the way true. Because if I'm trying to really bring my message to men and I really want them to uplift themselves, I don't start to shame them. What I try to do is get them to understand that there's a better way of doing things. And I even might say, listen, there's even levels to certain things, because like there's a level which is, if like you were saying, you want to get your woman in the most complete feminine state, yeah, pay all the bills. That is part of it. It's not all, but it's a part of it, right? That does help. If you can get somebody into that space where you can pay all the bills, it does ease her mind and her having to think about things, because all she has to think about is, quote unquote, the family or the house, whatever, right? So that takes a little bit of that financial stress away, which I totally understood, and I actually got it. And I think that was what's necessary. Not knowing what's necessary. I felt like what needed to be said was, so, you know, fellas, where you want to get to, this is the ultimate step. This is where you can get to ultimately. That doesn't shame anybody. That doesn't rebuke anybody. It just says, this is the ultimate step. If you can get to that step, amazing, because then what actually happens is this happens to the woman. That would have been what I felt like would have been a better message to bring it to the people. But instead, where he went to is, like you said, he went into the space of then starting to shame by calling these men a disease and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, you know, yeah, you trying to get a bite size.
Yeah, 100%. Because at the end of the day, I think, you know, from the positive aspect, what he's saying is that, you know, men need to step up to the plate. And if we're going to have families, we need to make sure that we are playing our role and, you know, keep treating our women the right way. Now, there are women who want to be stay-at-home wives and are fine with the man providing it all. My pushback on that is a lot of women have different expectations and want finer things and more things out of life. So that's not going to put the man in a position in most cases to be the sole provider, right? So if we're going to do me 100%, are you willing to work within the confines of the budget that I have? You know, because that's another thing that we have to talk about.
I agree that as well. Yeah, I think that's I mentioned that in the last live, which is, you know, most men can afford it, right? To say they can afford to pay all the bills. If we're living in a place where you may not necessarily like for your lifestyle, right? So if you know that, you know, if you're making a certain amount of money and you can only afford to rent or own your own house or whatever in a particular area because you know that fits your financial budget, and a woman is willing to stay in that realm, fantastic. Then it works. Then we grow gradually. You know what I mean? We expand. We take our time and we expand gradually. But if it's a case of where we present something and you're like, well, that don't work for me, then that's what we're saying about. That's where it can be a little bit of a difference, and there could be some strife and some struggle in that area as well. So I definitely hear that as well. Welcome, Jeffrey. Good to have you on here as well. What's your thoughts? 50-50. I don't know if you actually saw the video or any parts of it, but yeah, 50-50. Yeah. Tell me your thoughts, bro.
I saw parts of the clip. It was on, was it Hardly Initiated?
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate these type of conversations, honestly, because it becomes so contentious. One, it's like, if we're talking about provision, it only limits provision in the sense of finances and doesn't look at the other elements of provision. But if we're talking about this whole 50-50, I think people have to be very realistic about their expectations, looking at the social economic situation of today in our capitalistic society. How many men can really afford to pay all the bills like that when people are spending in excess, right? There are particular luxuries that people want to have, women want to have, and would have the expectation of men paying. It's not going to be like that. There are people within the top 10% or top 1% of 10% that can do all of that. Everyone now, people are on average, people need to work on their level. Now, I would love to pay all the bills. I would love to do all of that. But I have to be realistic. Can I do it at this time? Who knows? Maybe in the next 10, 20 years, I may become a billionaire or something. I would love to. But it doesn't work that way for some people. And I think women especially have to be mindful of that. I would say men, if they're not in a financial situation to pay for the bills, they should seek to at least be accommodating towards the woman's needs and at least lighten the load on her end. So if they have an expectation of what cooking for like her cooking and cleaning, they should also be cooking and cleaning as well. It's only fair. If a woman's having to be doing a full-time job, then coming home to be cooking, then coming home to be cleaning, and then also taking care of the kids, that's too much of a heavy burden on her. There has to be some form of an equilibrium in that type of relationship. It can't be the woman doing literally multiple jobs at once. It's going to tire her out, both physically as well as mentally and emotionally as well. And then also men would be having this idea of intimacy, and it's not going to work that way. But women also have to be mindful of that. Right now, at this moment in time, I don't want a man's worth to only be limited to just his finances alone. And that's what these type of conversations do. Because if we say that, because a lot of times men who are in a position to be able to provide will look down on guys who can't do it and then say you're not a man because you are not able to pay for all the bills. I hate that talk. So that's my 2 cents on the subject.
Want to jump back in, Sean?
Yeah, I would just say that you know, I'm with Jeffrey, right? It shouldn't be an indicator of your manhood. I do think that I get, like, when it comes back to just like him being so strong, I think sometimes we as men do need to realize that we shouldn't be biting off things that we can't chew. You know what I mean? Like and a lot of men do this. Like, you know, you want to have the family, you want to be the man, but you don't have all your stuff together. So you just kind of half stepping it. So to that end, I agree. Sometimes, you know, like as men, we need that wake up call. Like, hey, this is kind of like a framework or a formula that you can use to be successful. Now, again, where I feel he goes off wrong is saying like, oh, if you're not doing it exactly this way, like the way I'm saying it should, then you're out of line with God and then you're a disease. That part is wrong, right? But I do get that there's a lot of people out here, especially you got guys having kids splayed all over the place, right? But you don't have your stuff together, but you want to be the man. It's like, no, that's not actually what being a man is about. You need to be providing for your household. You need to be taking care of things. You need to be making sure that your woman is not stressed, and that if you're in a position financially to take care of your household, you should be doing that.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, jump back in.
Yeah, I was also going to add to this that I think if men know that they're being lazy in a situation, in relationships, that's something that it needs to be called out, where if they're not working to the fullest of their potential, that's one thing. But let's say they are, and they are wanting to grow. I think we should obviously encourage men to have a growth mindset where they want to elevate. Maybe they want to push for promotions, or maybe now look at ways to go into investments, maybe look into more education, at least empowering men to give them the tools to actually think outside of the box. So that way, if they want to up their finances, fine, cool. I think it's just being pragmatic about the current situation of affairs, and at least finding someone who's graceful enough to understand the situation, but also men not taking advantage of women in those areas. Because you do get cases of women saying that, you know what, I gave a man an opportunity. I thought he was the one. We had a plan. He didn't stick to the plan. He lied to me. So you hear those type of stories where women feel that they get done dirty by men who don't keep to their word as to what they said they were going to do regarding their finances. And then they end up, for the sake of not looking a certain type of way, they end up picking up the slack where the men are supposed to be leading in that charge. So that reality does happen.
Appreciate it. Jason, welcome to the conversation, man. It's good to have you, bro. Obviously, this video, the video that's been circling is Yada Talks on Hardly Initiated, and he speaks about 50-50. I don't know if you actually saw any of that video at all, but he speaks about 50-50 mindset. Want to get your perspective.
So I've seen a clip, and I was actually going to watch the video when I came back today. But so it's just so funny that we're actually having this conversation. Do you know what? My stance has always been the same. I'm not saying when I was younger, but from previous conversations that we've had, and I don't want to try and repeat what everyone said, but I haven't listened to, and I've just logged in, so I do apologize if I'm repeating certain things, right? But just to address this guy, first and foremost, he used to be someone that did 50-50 or even had to, and then things changed and he decided to not do that, and then he says, or all of a sudden I became a millionaire. I think there is a habit with some men to forget that the way that we are towards each other is, in our private conversations, is to uplift, is to say, this is my situation, bro, let me put you on, let me help you. So the aspect of him that's, you know, that's putting down men, it doesn't make sense, because that's generally not what we actually do, you know, at least in our private conversations anyway. So to me, this is someone who is, you know, well done, bro, for what you've been doing, what you've done for your family. But this is, to me, this is someone who is full of himself right now. Someone who is gassed about what he's been able to achieve. That's great. But that's not how us men talk to each other. That's not how us men address each other. If we're truly going to be the kings in society, what we do, we help each other. You know, what we say is, bro, this is what I did. We don't gatekeep. So this is what doesn't make sense to me. But as it pertains to 50-50 behavior, I say to every man, never get comfortable just where you are. You know, continue to aspire, and not just aspire or dream, but make sure you're actually taking action. This is one of the things that no matter what level you're at, these are one of the things that a mature woman wants to see. And when you're going to be with a woman, you have to make sure that she's also happy with where you are. She may want more for the family. That's fine. That's cool. But wow. Okay then. All right. Thank you, Dalia. But she may be cool, but you have to be mature about it. You know, I think, Sean, you mentioned about men not biting more than they can chew. That happens way too often, which is where a lot of men get angry at these things, and that's the problem. You know, speak to the woman that you want. In fact, before you even speak to her, try to understand what type of woman that she is. You know, and we all know sometimes ladies can say they're okay, but down the line when the reality happens, then, you know, they'll show us that they're not okay. That's fine, it happens. But I think this just boils down to women feeling that men are not aspirational anymore. You know, men are not entrepreneurs anymore. Men aren't trying to reach for the stars and take the action anymore. That men are lazy. And there is aspects to that, and I fully understand. So I'm not going to defend that. So to me, to avoid some of these situations, just work towards, you know, the things that you need to work towards. And if you want a particular woman to be in your life, make sure she's happy with what you're willing to bring. So you don't need to be a millionaire to give 100%. You know, you don't need to be a millionaire to provide. Just that the woman that you're with and the family that you're going to create, or that you have, has to be okay with the level that you're at. You know, she wants to be a housewife and you're earning, I don't know, 150 a year, then she needs to be okay with that. You know, she needs to not aspire to live a life of a 500k person. That doesn't make sense. And I feel like we have to be realistic in this society. We already know the percentages of people who are going to be 7-figure earners. So sometimes when those people at that level say some of these things, it goes in one ear and out the other, because it's like, what? Like, why have you forgot yourself now they're at that level? Like, have a real proper conversation. Whatever you're doing, speak to the brother. Speak to us. This is what we're doing, and that's it, man. So things back to me, I don't know, man. This is just not how we, as men, that we should be doing things. That's me, bro.
Love
Yeah,
that.
Jace.
Before you go, there's a comment which I'll bring up to the screen, and you don't have to answer it, but it'll steer the next part of the conversation. But go for it, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was just going to say that maybe one of the reasons why you said that the man before was doing 50-50 and then he transitioned and became like this new like 6-figure earning, right? I think maybe it could.
The caption I saw, because I haven't watched it yet, it's just based on the caption. It said that he became a millionaire after he stopped doing 50-50. So I haven't watched that particular video yet.
Okay, so if that is true, maybe it's just the fact that when you make that type of money, when you're now in that space, I think you now become disillusioned with reality. You know, you hear cases where how many times you hear people that used to live in the hood, they no longer live in the hood anymore. Like they're no longer in touch with the environment where they came from, because now they're living in a whole different class. So I think it's just the fact that, remember your roots. Like, remember where you used to come from. Like, be humble don't be prideful. But I think a lot of times there's a level of arrogance that comes along with that because people lose touch of reality once they meet these type of figures.
Sean, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I would say that, again, I think he's pushing a narrative and trying to make it cookie cutter. Now, I do believe that when a man is solely responsible for his household, then it is a major motivator, and you will likely be more successful because you're driven to take care of your family. I don't think it's because he stopped being 50-50. It's because he's a responsible person and he wants to see his family win. And now he knows that the weight of his family is solely on him, and he's no longer, leaning or looking towards the income coming from his wife to take care of them. So now the burden is shifted. So that means you really have to push forward. And for him, it worked out. And it propelled him further. But I don't think that's that's the recipe, right? Okay, stop going 50-50 and you're going to be a millionaire tomorrow. To me, you're selling something. Now you're trying to sell an idea on somebody to say they're going to get that same exact outcome when they stop doing 50-50, and I don't buy into that. But again, I do understand the notion. And when I was married, yeah, you just have a different drive. And although we weren't 50-50 in my marriage, we weren't 100%, 0% either, so we were somewhere more towards we pay based on who makes the most, which happened to be me. And I took the brunt of the bills, and then she spent her money on other things. So that worked for us, but that doesn't work for everybody else. And I just don't feel like you could just push that and say, okay, you're going to get here to there just if you do it this way.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the reality is the more responsibility you have, as a man, you tend to kind of rise up to that particular responsibility. But it's almost like, and to make this very clear, well, if you actually spent more time, you could be a millionaire. And guess what? You're not a freaking millionaire, are you? The reality of the situation is, right, that there is always a select few that rise to the top of the cream. And what sometimes a conversation starts to stem is like, everybody can get to the top of the cream. Well, then there wouldn't be cream, would there? Because there would be no top, since everybody's there. The reality of the situation is there are going to be winners, there are going to be losers. There are going to be people that are going to be at the top, there are going to be people at the bottom. And that's how life is, unfortunately, because since the fall of Adam and Eve, right? So that's why I was saying that the advice that's spoken should not carry shame. It should be those who have ears to hear. You got what I'm saying to you, right? Because if a millionaire comes and says, I got that advice to give you to make you a millionaire, I can guarantee you there'll be a lot of men who would go to that service, right? But what would happen is most of them wouldn't be able to implement what he said. And most of them will not become millionaires. You know why? 1, because of grace. 2, because of faith it takes. And 3, it's not your destiny to be a millionaire. We forget the scripture that says, listen, God is the one that enables us to even make wealth. Let me tell you something. Sometimes you're trying to force something. And sometimes it's not about the money you're meant to get. Sometimes it's your destiny and your calling you're supposed to be going into. It's your purpose you're supposed to go into. And although the scripture says, your talents will make ways for you before kings and queens, it does not mean you're going to be a millionaire, right? That's why not everyone's a king. That's why we saw in the Bible that not everyone's King David, not everyone's King Saul. There are kings and there are people who are your fighters, your legions, or whatever, opposing the army. And there are people at the very back who are frontliners. It works that way, right? And so I felt like you said, Sean, the correct word is cookie cutter, and then a razzle dazzle of shame in there. And I think that doesn't help us. It doesn't help grow it. It doesn't help us move forward. And no one wins when we bring the shame into the aspect of it as well. And so that's what I'm saying. We look at this YouTube game, right? Some people have got 5 million, 50 million. Some people, wait, Mr. Beast, who is absolutely trouncing. Why is no one copying Mr. Beast, please? This guy's must have the formula of all formulas because he's killing it. Why is it that no one else is able to copy what Mr. Beast has done? Because you ain't got a talent, you ain't got a skill, you're not Mr. Beast, you don't have the favor, you don't have the grace, and you don't have the money that he had at the beginning to be able to do some of the things he was doing. So in reality, we have different start points and have different end points too, right? And so I feel like a cookie cutter approach to saying this is what you need to do oftentimes doesn't benefit the crowd. What I would say is, like I said, I think if you want to get to our ultimate step, this is where you want to go to, right? This is where, this is where you're going to get, this particular behavior and its fullest and its ultimate. And I get that. But shaming the man them for that ain't never going to work. Shaming women for anything like that too, don't go work too. You know what I mean? So it doesn't work with human beings. The more you shame them, the more they hide. You're going to say something, Jeffrey?
Yeah, I was also going to say, we also have to keep in fact that the market right now is oversaturated. I mean, everybody wants to, quote unquote, be a millionaire or a billionaire. I can't tell you that. How many times have you guys seen on ads on YouTube? Oh, I can teach you how to make money. I can teach you how to do investments, forex trading, cryptocurrency, the next best thing, right? And there's so many pyramid schemes where everybody is trying to find the quickest way to try and make money. So that, and also there are a lot of guys that will fall for it. At one point in my life, I was one of those guys that potentially fell for that because I was so desperate wanting to make a lot of money because I wanted to be that guy. That's true. I wanted to be that guy. I'm thinking, you know what? I found like this potential thing that, okay, I can potentially make a lot of money, start investing. I had no idea what I'm doing. I'm giving somebody else money at the same time. Think about it. Pyramid schemes where everybody is trying to overextend themselves in order to try and get that. Maybe at that time it wasn't for me. Me saying that, I think women hearing this, us acknowledging the reality of the situation where we're living in a society where everything is becoming overextended. We're overextending ourselves to try and make a lot of money. We're overextending ourselves to try and provide. Everything is now becoming saturated. Taxes are going up. So much is happening. When we talk like this, it's maybe to women, they think that we're being defeatist, but that's not the case. It's just saying we understand the responsibility of what it means to be a provider. We acknowledge the difficulty. We're not going to give up, but we just want women to understand where we're coming from about this. I think if that makes sense, I think there has to be the same way men have to have grace upon women and not have this expectation upon them to do so much when we don't have much to even to offer. I think there has to be some form of reciprocity regarding how this is done. Otherwise, we're going to be going around in circles, having unrealistic expectations for women and women having unrealistic expectations for men in the context of provision.
I appreciate it. There's a point here, which I think would be a good point to discuss.
Yeah,
says, Felicia says, I hear you. Oh, no, Olu says, I hear you, but honestly, women should not be paying nada. A real man pays all the bills out of respect for himself. So want to get your points of view on this. Is it a real man that pays all the bills? If I follow that line of thought, I would say that then it means that anybody who doesn't pay all the bills, it's not a real man. So what's your thoughts on that, guys?
So, okay, so the first point is what you said, Coach, so that means he's not a real man. I mean, if that's how a particular woman feels, then that's how she feels. But for his manness or masculinity to be judged on that, no, absolutely not. Of course not. But again, if that's how a particular woman feels and that's what she wants in life, and that's what, if anything, that's what turns her on, a man who has the ability to do that, if that's how she feels safe, then cool, no problem. But part of this conversation, and I knew you was going to get here, is some of the contradictory behavior of it, which then amplifies the issue. Such as, if this is what a real man does, so what does a real woman do? Because we have men who, let's say, are struggling to step into that role. But then you have women who are fighting their particular role. So although you do get men who are successful, who can't handle a successful woman, you get men who don't want to handle a successful woman, you get men who treat successful women in a particular way. But you also have to understand, as men, as Jeff was saying, we still have that, what can I say? We still have that thing on our head that has the expectation to step into that traditional role, which is where this conversation is coming from. So if a man is able to perform that traditional role, then you have to accept that he's also going to want his lady to do that too. That's all it is. You're going to have to accept that. Now, if as a woman you are saying no, I also want to go out to work, I also want to do things, you also have to understand there's going to be a level of imbalance based on expectation, because he's out there earning whatever he's going to be earning. Yeah, you might be doing that too. So then what do you actually want then? Because what you're actually saying is you actually want a 50-50 relationship, because he's going to go out there and work and pay all the bills. So are you going to work and do the housework too? Or do you want him to help you? Because that would be a definition of 50-50 if he comes to help you. So you have to decide what you want. You know, we can't have a confusing conversation. You have to decide what you want. It's either what feminism has created, and by the way, I don't have an issue with women going into work, doing what they need to do, but we also have to understand how is that benefiting what you actually want deep down? Because a man has his own expectations too. Never forget that. Men have their thoughts, men have their feelings. It's not just about what a woman wants. It's also what do men actually want? The type of man that you want, what does he also want? And you have to come together and decide what that is. There can't be this confusion, you know, this contradictory behavior. If not, this is what creates the mess. That's my thoughts on it.
What's the thought, Sean?
Yeah, no. Anytime anybody says a comment like that, I just kind of dismiss it, because it's like this whole "what's a real man" and "what's a real woman," to me, that's almost like where you're gonna clickbait me into an argument. So, yeah, I think if two people in that relationship are on the same page, because I think that's where we see the issues, when there is an imbalance and when they are not on the same page. But if the man and the woman are on the same page about how they're managing their finances, whether it's 50-50, 100-0, whether it's 90-10, whatever the percentages are, as long as they are on the same page and they're working together for the greater good of their household, then they're good in my book. That's my opinion about it, right? Now, I do think men should provide. So I'm not dismissing that aspect, but I'm saying we can't mischaracterize people as not being real men or real women or real anything because they're not doing what we think they should do. I think that just all that does is engender issues. Now, what I will say, and this goes back to my point, is they've got to do what works for them and what they've agreed on, because somebody made this comment. I think it was Miss Ione, and I started, Coach. It's like there's men that are doing 100% of the providing, but they are outside of the home 100% of the time, and the women are stressed and frustrated. So yeah, they're doing all the provision, but women are still unhappy, right? And they're still in discord in the household. So the kids are not seeing them. They're not an active presence in their household. So that also causes discord because they're not on the same page on how their family and finances need to run. So we could talk about finances, but if you're not on the same page as the way your family should run, the percentages mean nothing.
Yeah, go for it. Jeffrey, want to say something?
Nah, it's just funny how a lot of times people hold the conversations about, you know, you're not a real man because you're not paying all the bills. You're not a real man because it's funny how people who are at the top 10%, we're all trying to get to the top 10% at this point, but some people are going to get in the door and some people are not. So the fact that we're having a conversation that is very privileged and is more reserved for people in that position is funny. For me, all I can simply say is I have to focus on just providing and always trying to push to excel. And by the grace of God, if I get to a high position, if I get there, I get there. If it's for me, if it's for me. If it's not, it's not. I'm just saying that manhood and masculinity shouldn't only be attributed to just how much money a person makes, because if that be the case, women get upset about the fact they get objectified just by how they look. So if we're literally now boiling the essence of manhood and masculinity to something that is superficial and shallow, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying it's just surface level to me. That's all I gotta say towards that.
Can I just add 2 pence as well? Not based on what Jeff is saying, but what I'm seeing in the comments. For anyone joining in at this point in time, understand that all 4 of us men on this panel we don't have an issue with, as a man, giving 100% of the finances, you know, saying to our wife, listen, you don't have to do none of that. Don't. Like, let me cover it. None of us have an issue doing that, right? Myself and Sean used to be married, you know, when I was divorced. I'm sure Sean can give, and he's given his actual, you know, one particular comment on it. For me, my ex-wife said to me straight, her expectation is that as a man, if I'm not doing 100%, I'm still doing the majority. You know, at that time, I couldn't do that. But now I earn 3 times, well, more than 3 times as much as I did back then. So yeah, I could do that now. But we're not complaining about it. We actually understand it. As much as it could be tough to take for men who are not in that position, and we understand why. Look, men and women have their sensitivities, especially because of the way, as we're talking about this guy, we talk down to people, especially when it comes to money. But in general, men do want to be in that position. It's just whether they can. It's just whether men have the drive, which is what's highlighted earlier. And I think this is the real issue, because normally this stems from women not feeling safe. That, you know, and for me, I understand that when it comes to marriage, if a woman, you know, for example, my missus now, right? I know going back to work in 6 months after she gave birth, maybe a year, is not the ideal. So that's something I got in the back of my mind. You know, I have a friend right now who, you know, just had a baby. So he knows he's going to have to pay the bills 100% for a period of time so that his missus doesn't rush back to work. Now, can that be indefinite? No. But he's got plans to make that. You know, he wants to open up a coffee shop. He wants to do certain things. So it's just about getting there. So I think this is to the women. So if you're meeting a man and you know, you're happy where he is and you also encourage him to get more, like, as long as he's doing that, be okay with where he is. But don't be with a man who you're truly not happy where he is and then try to, I don't even know what word to use, but it's just not going to work. It's truly not going to work. It's the same thing as a man. As Sean said earlier, if you're trying to be with a woman who from the gate wants more, it's never going to work. So don't even do it. Just, to me, understand where you are and just work from there. You know, that's why this conversation normally for me, I don't know, man. For me, it's also an annoying conversation because my mindset is, let me just work. Let me just go. Like, I got my vision. I got my plans. I can write them down. I can speak about them all day. I'm just going to get where I'm going to get to. That to me is what the conversation needs to be. You know, I'm tired of this versus this. Trust me, it annoys me, but I get why some people want to have the conversation, mainly because of their experiences. So I understand it.
Yeah, listen. I mean, listen. I'm alignment. I want to give another perspective, maybe as an understanding person. So I remember before, obviously, I was more of, let's say, pay more or pay even all. If you want to call it, I call it that kind of mindset. I was more 50-50. When I was younger, I was far more 50-50. When I was, you know, in my 20s, I was very much 50-50. All right. And it's because I was looking at my bank account. Okay. I was looking at the outgoings. And when I was really calculating it, and I was looking at lifestyle and I was looking at everything else that goes with it, I said to myself, well, if you work in the same kind of job I'm working, we better put this money together. Right? Because if we're gonna make this, thing work, yeah, bring your money to the table. Because what was the point of you working? Why did you want to go to work? You wanted to go, you know what I mean? That was how my mind was at the time. Because again, financially, I didn't earn that much, right? I was below the average salary at the time, right? The average salary in UK is around about 33,000. I was making at the time 20K. Do you know what I mean? I need to, and I want to make it very clear. This 50-50 mindset you lot are talking about, it's not a black thing. I want to be very, very clear. It's not. Like when I was talking to people who are, okay, they weren't having I'm not saying they weren't having the conversations. There were people that didn't want to do 50-50. There were white women that were saying they don't do 50-50. But there were also a lot of women that were like, yeah, I get it. I have to work with my man and make it work. So the mindset is not a black people thing. And I get tired of that conversation. It's only black men. It's only black men that know how to. It's not a black thing. It is all races, all ethnicities. They all have the same conversation because once you realize that you cannot afford to live a certain lifestyle, you need to put your finances together, right? Now, what I would say is at that time, what would have better served me is to have a better understanding of what my role actually was going to entail for a woman and myself in a relationship, right? I was still kind of winging it, still kind of trying to do my own thing and not fully understanding it, right? And the more I've come into understanding the masculine role and the man in the role, it's changed my mindset on that aspect. Do you get what I'm saying to you? But also my bank account's changed as well, so that also helps, right? So, you know, that also helps. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to forget that other people are in that position, right? So when I give advice, it's not going to be like all lofty about it and be like, you know, forgetting that people are not in that position. It's to understand that, you know. And so I think for me personally at the time, I didn't fully understand the roles that we have to play. And because I wanted to have a mindset of everything is fair, do everything fair. That means if you're paying half and I'm paying half, all I was thinking was, well, I'm going to do half the work at the home. Now I know a lot of ladies will probably say that maybe I'm an exception. Fine, but that's how I was thinking in my head. I'm thinking to myself, I'll do some cooking, I'll do some cleaning, I will look after the kids, especially, you know what I mean? I've championed that. I look after my siblings. So that ain't a thing for me. You know what I'm saying? She like, when that baby comes, baby, I got this. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that didn't phase me. The one thing that was always on my mind that always came to me, even whilst I was doing 50-50, was there's 9 months in a pregnancy that you may be out the game, and then a further 9 or 10 or maybe a year or two, you're out the game of working. Somehow have to find a way to cover you. That was always on my mind, right? Because I'm always thinking ahead. That's the only part I was like, how am I going to make that work? And here's the reality, right? And that's what I said about and Jeff, you said this, we're having a very privileged conversation. You're having a privileged conversation because you earn enough. Well, hopefully all of us in the chat earn a certain amount, oftentimes, which takes us beyond the average living salary, right? But if you're below the average salary, life don't work so simply and so beautifully. You're actually having to work together. And sometimes not just work together, you also have to realize that people are operating on debt, as in they got credit cards, they got loans to make their day-to-day work. So that's why I said that particular advice is detrimental, because people are really trying to make life work. And someone's just sitting there going, just work harder. And the person looking like, I'm trying to work hard, I just don't have the tools necessarily to make it out of here. And that's why I said about grace being given, because when you start talking, and both men and women do this, when you start talking from a privileged perspective, not understanding the day-to-days of other people's lives, you start to become an oppressor yourself by the way you talk, right? And you talk from your privilege. So we have to be considerate about that. Not everyone has made it out of the place. My financial income status is not the same as my brother. It's not even the same as my dad's. I'll be honest with you. You know what I mean? I out-earn all of them, right? But that's something to boast about and be like, yeah, well, you need to work harder. No, it's an understanding that there's a grace on my life that takes me to this particular place. So I have to understand, when I give advice, I have to take that nuance into perspective. And then I have to look at the stats. The stats are not backing up anything that people are usually saying about the situation. Most people, a lot of people, the majority of people are living on the breadline. So talking as if everyone's a high value man or woman, has all this kind of money, you are privileged. If you make over the average income of your country, America's, I think they said it's 57,000, but I think actually it's actually less than that, because that was the median of a household. Baby, they like us. They're on that 40 to 35,000, okay? Per person, I'm talking about, right? So per person, I think it works out from about 35, 40,000 per person. It's the breadline. Because honestly, to make life work, the things that are coming at you left, right, and center, is really difficult. So I want us to be very careful, not just the men, not just women, sorry, but the men too, about how we're going to be talking about other men, especially if you know you've made it out of that place and you've reached a new pinnacle. You should have more grace for other people. And that's what I needed from him, you know what I mean? So yeah, but there are things that we should be doing. So we can talk about that after as well. Yes, Jason, you want to say something?
And I just want to address something, well, on the line of the black issue, which you highlighted here, and it's something that I noticed, but I've never brought it to the panel. I guess we've never really had the conversation. I'm not making it a men and women thing. I'm saying it's a black community thing. Not everyone does it, but it's something that I've noticed. There is a different expectation that black people have towards each other than what other races or whatever you want to call skin colors do, because you mentioned white. Sometimes when I've seen black men or black women date let's say, white people, the type of person that that person is, how they carry themselves. I'm thinking, the type of black men or the black women that you was going for were not like that at all. If you did I guess, meet a black woman or a black man who was like that, you wouldn't date them. So to me, I start to see there's a different expectation. There is a different conversation, not only what people are willing to put up with, but what people are simply willing to just try and be happy with. Therefore, I understand in the black community, and I mentioned the word earlier, the adversarial nature has crept into the majority of our conversations. So when you hear black men, black men, black men, that's an anger towards black men. That's saying black men in general, we are an issue. We are a problem. That's what's going on in our society. So naturally, things like this are going to amplify. Black men can't provide. Black men can't do this. Black men are like this. Black men put the black woman down. This is what we're dealing with. So naturally, this is going to be a conversation, because you don't really hear other races or whatnot amplifying these types of conversations. Do some people want it? Yeah, but they just get on with it. Whatever their circumstances, whatever they want to date, they just get on with it and date it. It's just that in our community, we amplify a lot of the adversarial things that turn us against each other. I'm not even going to say why, but that's been happening for a very, very long time. So, to me, we just as a people need to take a step back and start uplifting each other more instead of putting each other down, or allowing, some of our experiences and what we've grown up in, to make us feel like we are not good enough for each other. Like that, to me, that's a big problem.
Facts. No, you know what, Jace? You actually brought up something very interesting about that, about the adversarial nature. I don't know how many years ago this was, but something happened on Culture on your live. I think you were doing like this is so long ago, but basically there was some, I guess, feminist that came onto your platform a long, long time ago. I think what happened was it Corey? Corey was having a conversation with one of the people talking about, the expectations of women, average women and stuff like that. And then some feminist, I don't even remember what her name was. As soon as he brought that up, the adversary aspect of it came out, and it was like a back and forth to the point where I believe you had to mute her out of the conversation completely. So it's like, I think due to a lot of anecdotal experiences that women have had with men that they have dealt with, and just due to past traumas, whether it be from family members, whether it even be from the men that women have chosen to interact with, I think it's to the point where there are women in the black community that can no longer trust or depend on the concept of what it means to be a man. They don't believe in the idea of leadership anymore. They don't believe in it. And so much so some of them even fear entertaining the idea of getting with a black man because of that. And this fear mongering has unfortunately been to our detriment, where no longer do they believe in the concept of relationships or working together. And some would use the whole six-figure thing, a man having to pay more as maybe as a security blanket. If he at least has a lot of money, I will feel secure in that way. So I think it's more like a coping mechanism. They don't want to take that chance of being burnt again. They don't want to take that chance of being hurt again, if that makes sense. That could also be another reason why there's this adversarial nature. And it could stem from all the way back when, I don't want to bring that up, but that could be another reason why they don't want to deal with black men. And I guess now, because we're getting a whole lot of mind vomit of them saying, y'all black men ain't this, y'all black men ain't that, y'all ain't this, y'all ain't, and it's just being so it's more focalized on social media now, more than ever before. And I think this could also be the reason why people say, men are trash and stuff like that, for that reason.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff. Seaway, welcome to the conversation. Before you go, ladies, we do want your opinions as well. We want also the ladies to give us their point of view. We're trying to have a good discourse and conversation. Please, I want to beg the ladies, if you come up, please don't try to throw darts. Let's just have a conversation. We genuinely want to have a real conversation, actually try to bring some solutions to the table. So if you know you're here to be an adversary and just say mad things, I honestly will just mute you and take off. I don't want to do it. I want it to be a really good conversation. So far, it's been really good. And I want to keep it, sweet. But of course, say your piece. If you disagree, you disagree. You know what I'm saying to you? Yeah, we want your disagreements as well. So we're not saying that at all. But yes, go for it, Seaway. Appreciate you.
Can you catch me up? Because I was working. So kind of what are we?
So basically, we just had. Oh, sorry. So we're talking about the 50-50 basically. Basically, there was this video that's really dropped. Yada Talks was on Hardly Initiated. And it was actually a really good conversation. There was a lot of things that he said that I actually fully agree with. But in the end, he kind of demonized in certain parts men who didn't necessarily, I guess, pull their boots in that particular area, right? So if they wanted 50-50, he basically said, you're not a real man. He said, basically at one point, I think he even kind of said it's from the devil. So, he really went in with some of the comments he made about that. So, but I guess we're having a more general conversation about 50-50, about finances and the ratio, the role it plays and how people see it, how women see it. We wanted to see the other side of things as well, like in your perspective for the ladies, like, how do you see it? Do you see 50-50 as a plausible route? Yes, no. If not, why not? How do you see it going for you? Obviously, you're married, so you can give us a different perspective. So love to hear your perspective.
I think this is a good conversation. And I know I make a lot of jokes about the 50-50 warriors and definitely Black men being the leaders of the 50-50 warrior community. But what I will say is I think we're seeing this on both sides. Kind of the turn of tide, especially with what's going on in the economy. I know a lot of y'all are from across the pond, but I'm sure y'all are feeling it over there too. But just what's going on with the economy and just kind of the changes of roles. And I think a lot of us haven't fully caught up. And I think we're seeing this with, like, what they call it, the modern feminists as well. Like, what is that? Or like the modern submissive, like, what is that? Like, there's a lot of like changes going on. So what I'll say is that my issue with someone who leads with I want to be 50-50 type situation is that a lot of times those aren't very generous men and doting men and men that are willing to kind of go all out for their lady. And that's where I have an issue. I don't necessarily want to be with a man that doesn't seek to provide to the best of his ability. Where I think things get lost on the internet is that there's stages and phases to people's lives. And there is times where, like, let's say I was dating my husband in law school, which I wasn't. And we were both splitting, going 50-50 dating, splitting bills on using our student loans. That's completely different than at a time where he had a large law firm job and I was working at the state's attorney's office and he come in there and say, I want to go 50-50. Well, that's completely different. That's showing that he's a stingy man. And I just wouldn't want to be with a stingy man. And I think the other problem is that where I'm seeing this turn of tide is a lot of men are saying, not a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, because I see this more on the internet than I do in real life. But let's just say the stuff on the internet is real life, right? I see men on the internet and some in real life who want to be 50-50, but still are carrying some of these old school ways. Like, you want to be 50-50, but you want to be the leader and everyone has to listen to everything that you say. And you said you want to, you want a woman to cook and clean and all these things. And I think we just all need to catch up with the current reality of life in 2023. And there has been a blending of roles completely on both sides. And I still think there is room for a man to pay a lot of the bills and to be the provider in many ways if he makes more money. But I also don't think it's realistic to think that in 2023, unless a man is making well over $600,000, $500,000 a year, that you're going to just be relying on one income and you could just keep all of your money. Like everyone's chipping in, everyone is helping out. And I think that is realistic, but it's just the mentality of some of these, what I call 50-50 warriors, who are looking to take my money to add to theirs and then have the audacity to want strict submissiveness. Like, that's just not how that works. Like, you shouldn't be looking at my money, counting it to your money and think it's our money. Like, that's just, I know we in 2023, but I don't think we're there yet. We're not there yet. So I hope that wasn't argumentative. I think I see both sides, but
no, you can argue. You can argue. You're good. I wasn't saying you can't argue, but we can tussle. I was saying about people throwing darts. So people are trying to.
But I think that's where we're at. You know, but I will say that I think this is more of an internet conversation. I think in real life, I see men, including Black men, doing their best to provide and take on more of the heavy burden of the Black men I know in relationships. I don't see all of this 50-50 stuff in real life. I legit only see this on the internet with people in serious like relationships. So I just want to say that. I don't think that's I don't think that's the reality. I think a lot of times these podcast dudes, not the one we're talking about because he doesn't like 50-50, but some of the other podcasts, they have a loud platform and it makes it seem like that's just the way Black men think. And I don't think that's the majority of men, but there are some.
That's cool. Would you disagree? Because just pick up on your point, maybe you can clarify it a bit better. So would you disagree? Like, for instance, let's say someone says, okay, some couples will do it, and particular demographic actually do this a bit. It's like we put our money together and we operate from the pot of the money together. Would you disagree from that perspective for yourself?
That's not necessarily how I live.
Okay.
But I do believe in chipping in to do different things. I don't believe in like me taking my money and spending it all to go on nails and hair, like I personally don't live that life. I feel like JT, we live a totally different life. I don't live that life. And I didn't grow up seeing that. I grew up seeing the man take on a lot of the heavy bills, but I also saw my mother turn around and paid a lot of the college tuition, right? So it's kind of all kind of a figure. It's kind of in your imagination. Like it looks one way, but like a real partner that's chipping in, like you're gonna be spending your money on things. Like I spend my money on things, and sometimes I'll take a lot of the trips, or I'll book the hotels, or I'll book the flights, or stuff like that. So my money is being spent. I think it's just coming out of like something that I want to do and not something that I'm required to do. And I think a woman who's really interested in being a partner is not going to let their man suffer, take on all the financial stuff where he can't do anything. He can't pay for anything because he's taking care of the household, and you're just going to sit there like, okay, that's great. I just feel like a woman who wants to be a partner will not allow that. But I do think it's nice to see a man step up and take that lead, because I think a good woman will step up with you and help you out and pool money and do what you got to do. And then that's just how it is. But there may be one day, I just had this conversation, like maybe one day I do something that makes me a whole lot of money. Like if I'm making more money, I'm going to put in more to the pool, especially with someone who's been down for me from the beginning, taking care of me from the beginning. I just think you have to know who you're with. I don't think it's black and white. And there's a lot of modern couples, some of these people who believe in life partnerships and not marriage, who do this pooling stuff all the time. These white people do this pooling stuff all the time. I also think though white men don't carry as much in those relationships, these toxic masculine traits. They're okay with being a little bit more submissive. And so I think their relationship works that way. They can pool their money and it just works out. So I think there's also that to think about. Like you have to think about what works for your relationship. I just know most women do not want a man talking about where's your half of the rent. That's all I can say. We don't really like that. But if you pulling money because that's what you decide to do, that's completely different.
So you don't want us to be saying where's your half of the rent?
No, that's very unattractive. Unless we both ain't got it. Unless we both pulling pennies and we both need our half of the rent, that's different. You should got
see, we're killing me because she said, "Listen, if I'm down, we need to both be down." Basically, what she said was, "If I'm down, we both need to be down. But if I'm down alone, I can't be down alone."
Not finna be down alone. But if we down alone with a goal, cool. But this struggle of splitting half the rent, that's a 20 to 30 situation. That is not a 30 plus situation. We splitting rent 20 to 30. You 30 plus, you better struggle by yourself and figure it out.
Oh man, I appreciate Seaway as well. And I know Sean's going to give a rebuttal. I think I just wanted to say just really quickly that I remember I had a conversation about this last year. Someone reached into my inbox and was talking about it. And so I did a quick calculation because I like money and I like to calculate and I like budgets. And she gave me things that she would willingly be paying for and I would happy to pay it, right? And I said, and she said, what I asked her, what did she expect me to pay? She said the mortgage, and I think the mortgage and then another big bill, like maybe electricity and whatever, whichever was the biggest next bill, car note, electricity, right? But once we started adding up all the little things that she's going to have to pay for, guess where her financial contribution ended up to? Only £200 short of mine. I said to her, do you know what it is? And see where you kind of touched on it, right? It is the image. It is when you calculate how much you're actually paying, you are almost 50-50, right? And that's not everybody's situation, not everyone's situation. But I'm saying, it's like someone said, obviously in the chat, oh, roommates. Yeah, because it looks like roommates because I've asked you for 50% of the rent. So if I pay the rent and let you pay everything else and your finances come up very close to mine, you're still a roommate. But then I realized it's not about that. It's about the imagery. It's almost like when we talk about the relationship where a girl or a guy wants to tell their friends and they kind of spruce up the story to make it seem really nice. Like, oh, he pays the rent, he pays the mortgage, he pays this and that. But really and truly, baby, your account every month is leaving almost 200 short of mine. You are 50-50, if not 48-52. Okay, so you still have 50-50 mark, but it's actually more about the imagery for a lot of people, not necessarily yourself, Siwe, but for a lot of people, it's the imagery. Hence why they say, I just want the mortgage paid, the light and the gas and electric or whatever paid, whatever. But when you calculate your car notes and you calculate your insurances, you calculate, for instance, holidays or whatever, when you start putting your money together, baby, you are paying a lot. You know what I mean? But I know she wanted to say something as well, and then we'll get other ladies to come in as well. Go for it, Sean.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and I know Seaway came in towards the tail end of our discussion. I'm with her on, pretty much what she was saying, but I think it's also the relativity part of it, right? It's how much does the woman make versus how much does the man make, and how much are our household expenses? If we just bought a house and the house we could have been $100,000 cheaper than the house that we have, but that's the house you wanted, and you're working, the expectation is, you're going to contribute. Now, will it be 50-50? I don't necessarily think so. But from somebody that's been a homeowner, it's hard if both people are working and you're not in a very modest home where the woman's not going to pitch in. There's always things going on with the house. You have insurance, you have your appliances, you have your hot water boiler, you got the washer and the dryer. So unless, again, the man is making $500,000-$600,000 by himself, it's going to be very difficult for there to be no contribution from the wife to the household for that household to be, sustained. So that's all I'm saying. Now, if we're living, and I think it's another key point is, if we happen to not be homeowners and we're living in an apartment, are we in an apartment that I can reasonably afford by myself? Is this an apartment that I would have by myself? But if we've moved into a much larger apartment and the rent on that apartment is 3, 4, 5 times what my monthly income is, hey, we're going to have to look at that, and it needs to be relative. And yes, you might need to contribute. And yes, when it's time to pay that bill, that rent, you might get a tap, 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 tap from me. Like, hey, listen, the rent's due. or if you're the one that cuts the check or pays it online, then, you know, I might be like, hey, babe, everything in the joint account that needs to be jointing so we can pay this bill because, hey, we're in a place that's a little more expensive. Now, if we're modest, we're living modestly, then that's a very different situation. But a lot of people, especially people that are middle class and upper to middle class, we get to those levels. And I say we because that's, you know, I feel like that's the mindset I have too. You want the nicer things. You know, you've worked hard to attain a certain level and you want the nicer things. You want the apartment building with the amenities. You want, you know, you want to be in spaces where you feel comfortable. And a lot of times you want that luxury. It's going to take equal contribution. Now, again, I'm not saying it's necessarily 50-50, but it's going to need to be something.
Sean?
All right. Before you jump in, Jeff, I want to get one of the ladies coming because they just come in. Nicole, go for it.
I just have to say this first. Well, first of all, hi everyone. I have to say this. I 100% agreed with Seaway. Just had to get that out of the way. I think it was Jason. You mentioned something, and I thought it was very interesting earlier on. You said, or a few minutes ago, you said in that community we have these expectations that if we were dating outside of our races, we would not have on them. And I have to 100% agree with that. I've seen it on both sides, not just men, because I know we say a lot of times it's the men, but I see it with the women too, right? And I can say years before getting married, I did the same thing. So I know not like just something, you know, I can admit that I can say I had slightly different expectations, right? But I do think that the problem, I guess, with the whole 50-50 thing is a lot of the men that do say they want 50-50, which I have to agree once again with Seaway, is that I really only see this on the internet. And then if I do see it in real life, what I tend to notice is they want 50-50. They're loud and brash about it, but they still want this traditional lifestyle. And that's just, you can't be traditional like that in 23, where I don't know about anybody else, but in Chicago, it is expensive just to go out to dinner, right? I don't come from a wealthy family, but I do come from a to do enough to where my mom probably didn't have to work, but she contributed. And it was a different way. So she contributed by groceries. She contributed college funds. She contributed. And I do think that when we talk about the whole 50-50 thing, right? We don't want to hear it, but I think most reasonable women understand that it's going to take my contribution, right? So I don't think most women, I'm not saying that there aren't some women, but I think most reasonable women say, you know what? Yeah, I am willing to contribute, but I think it's just rude and really brass, excuse me, to say to a woman, here, pay these bills, my children, cook my meals, clean my house, and he is, contributing 40-50%. It doesn't make sense. But like I said, I don't see this in real life, right? When I look at my neighbors, and I'm surrounded mostly by white people, they are splitting bills. That woman is paying bills in that household, and she's not complaining about it, mainly because she knows this is just how the world works. So I think we do need to keep in mind that this seems to be like a tug of war in the Black community, where we love to say what's going on in other communities. We don't even really realize it. Like, even when you go to get your nails done, right? And you go to maybe the Asian salons, right? I see men in there working. And 9 times out of 10, that guy is somebody's husband. So he's working alongside because they understand that it is going to take two. And we talk about, generational wealth and stuff like that. It takes two to build that. So a lot of times you can't just build that on your own, or you can't just say, well, he can pay all of the bills and we'll save my money. That, I don't think that's really realistic in 2023. It would be great, but it's just not realistic, and I think that's where we sometimes have to remember that. I also think, though, lastly, and I'll shut up, is I think um some of the men that I hear on these podcasts, and I'm sorry but I have to say this, they sound like Dusties. They sound like they don't, like they are angry and they are bitter about something. So it's kind of like they're like, well, I'm not doing this unless she's doing this. It's relationships don't work that way. If you get into a marriage, I can't, if something happens to my husband tomorrow, I got to be able to hold this down. If something happens to me tomorrow, my husband needs to be able to hold whatever I was taking on down. And I don't understand why there's this war that is going on and people are constantly talking about 50-50. Everybody puts in something. If you want to live, if you want to travel, if you want to eat out, if you want to do whatever, everybody puts in something. So that's
Yeah, I definitely hear that. And I just want to say as well, I just want to shout out the Nigerians out there, because y'all are causing inflation in the market, and I need you to stop. Okay? All right? Stop it. All right? The Nigerians out there, both in UK and US, okay, you got the same reputation. Stop it. You're inflating the market. Okay? It's like you're putting fake cash into the market, and I need you to stop. Okay? The rest of us are suffering because I've got too many women who have come with the same story. But Nigerians, they will pay from the beginning to the last. You know what I'm saying? No, shout out to Nigerians. They really do. They really do. They really do embody that bigger aspect. You're hard pressed to find any Nigerian who won't be trying to pay all the bills. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I shout out to them as well. So no slander on my side. I actually do appreciate them. Ludwin, I want to get your perspective. Thank you for that, Nicole. It's got a good perspective as well. See where Nicole, both you guys are married as well, so you can give us a great perspective. So I appreciate that. Ludwin, go for it.
Hello, everyone.
What's Gucci?
So it's been a while since I've been up here. Hello, Seaway, for that word of wisdom. I think the last time we had this 50-50 conversation, I'm going to say the exact same thing. So anytime I hear a man talk about he wants to go 50-50, I automatically assume that he doesn't have a lot of money. You see how you said earlier, when you were younger, you felt like when you were making 20, okay, it wasn't enough. So you had to ask for your partner to divvy in the responsibilities. And that's how I feel like at any point when COA said this is an ages and stages type of thing, where it would be more honest if someone under 30 says, you know what, let's pull our money together because we have this and this goal to accomplish. For those who got married younger, it's okay, let's do this together. However, if a man in their 30s open their mouth and tell a grown woman, let's go 50-50, I will assume that you are not where you need to be and you should not be looking into getting a relationship or trying to marry someone, because there's a lot of responsibilities that come within a marriage. There are children, like Carol was saying, when it comes to funding a scholarship. funds, all these things takes a lot of opportunities for us to work to put those funds together. So we can't just think about, like, literally, I saw a TikTok recently where this woman was complaining that daycare is almost the same as her mortgage. We have to take this seriously. Yes, I can understand what you were saying, Kojo, about nuances, but a lot of times shame is necessary, because sometimes men understand shame and make them get up and really do something about it. Because a lot of times women nowadays are saying that men are becoming into their soft life. They don't want to work as they used to. Like, they some people may say like they hate Candace Owens, but Candace Owens was saying like this generation would not survive what people survived in the 40s, the war that people went to. We would not go to war. The men nowadays are not the type of men that were before. They're not actively doing what they're supposed to, technically, which is be a full provider. And yes, we could say it's not just money. However, we need to get the money together first before we start asking about being supportive, being a loving husband, being actively sharing the household responsibilities. But the first thing first, they need to get together is the money. And then we'll make you guys go to therapy and fix your past trauma. Maybe you can start being a better loving husband. Maybe you learn about the five languages of love. I'm sorry, five love languages. It's we have to start somewhere. However, I do understand how a man feels about himself is when he feels secure in himself. And part of that security in a man's manhood is finances. We see a lot of women who have money get with men who makes less than them, and they treat them like dogs. We have celebrities, for example, of that. We were shocked when Gabrielle Union was saying she paid half the bills, and it's crazy where it's women in any age, in any financial status, are dealing with men who treat them like crap, or like who are not pulling their weight to do the full responsibility of paying for everything. And that's the part where I have an issue with, is that we need to start somewhere. Granted, this conversation can get really wary on other people and people get tired of it. However, like, we can only say so much as women because we want you guys to hear and start taking action. That's it.
No, I appreciate Leland as well. Thank you for sharing that perspective. I don't know if one of the guys wanted to jump in a little bit and say their piece.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that the ladies have said. So thank you for coming up, and we welcome more ladies to come, and just give their thoughts. You could be completely left or completely right. We just welcome the conversation. I just want to talk about the image, something that you brought, Kojo, because it's absolutely right. Because we all know the saying that the man provides the house and the woman turns the house into a home, right? So the expectation is still there on our heads about what a man is supposed to do when it comes to marriage, because really this is a marriage conversation. And that's not going away. Even if there's men out there who don't have the ability, or men who are running away from the responsibility of that, that the expectation of a man in that sense is not going away. So I agree. A lot of time it is the image of a man being able to do that. This isn't our particular circumstance, but I was having a conversation with my missus about some of these things, and she even said, for her, I'm not saying generally, but just for her, again, it's one thing to say when you're not in the situation, but that, even if a guy wasn't the primary earner, she would still want the man as a man to manage the finances, so to speak. And she's an accountant, by the way. And she said, no, like, just because you're not the primary earner for her doesn't mean you're not the man. Again, it's one thing to say, but in a reality situation, it may change. I warn all men about that. So again, you have to know who you're with. You have to know, you have to have these discussions to understand the person's perspective. And then when the reality of the situation happens, then, okay, hold on. How do we need to manage moving forward? So, but because this is a specific financial conversation, as men, we should understand what, the image that exists. But one thing I mentioned earlier, because now that we have more people here, you may not have heard it, is as a man, because the expectation is still on our head when it comes to provision, and somehow this gets put onto you're a real man because of this, you're a real man because of that. I mean, so the question is, as a woman, what do you want? If a man is able to do that, you know, but you may still want to go out there and work, but then you're still going to want 50-50 from him when it comes to the housework, because you can't. I mean, the complaint is I can't be going out to work doing everything and coming home and doing all of the housework. You still want your man to, you know, to help you. So that is 50-50. It's just that, you know, he might be able to cover the house, but it's still technically 50-50, because 50-50 doesn't have to mean equal. It's kind of a contradiction to what 50-50 is, but it's the context is what is 50-50 in a household? What does that actually mean? So these are the things that need to be discussed, because they will cause a lot of issues. Because a lot of men who can provide and do everything do want a woman who is going to also be traditional, also is going to play her part willingly. And that can cause friction. So if you still want to go out there for yourself, you know, for maybe you feel that you need to protect yourself, maybe you feel going out there to be a success in whatever you do is something that you need to do, that's understandable, that's completely fine. But you also have to understand that is naturally going to affect the home. I know women who said, you know what, I'm going to go down to part-time. You know what, I'm not going to work anymore, because they saw what was happening in the home and they felt that they needed to be there. You know, I mentioned when women give birth, and, you know, very few women want to go back to work in 3-4 months. So naturally there is an expectation on the man, but you have to discuss, first of all, even before you discuss, understand properly what you want and all the angles, so you don't come with a contradiction. And when you've decided this is what I want, this is what's going to look long term, have that conversation early. I don't believe those conversations should be happening down the line. I don't understand that. You know, if a man can't have conversations about marriage, about finances, I'm not saying he has to tell you everything, but when it comes to the expectations on the first 1 or 2 dates, or even the conversations before the dates, to me, that's not a mature person, because these are real conversations that we need to have, because this is what breaks down marriages. This is what can cause divorce. Of course, there's many other aspects that can go into it, but I just feel as adults, we need to have a more mature conversation early, you know, just so our expectations are fully understood.
Kojo, can I respond to that really quick?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Because I think, Jason, you just brought up a really good point. And I think this is why it's helpful to listen to lots of different people's content, even if you don't necessarily agree with everything that they're saying. Because one thing that I have realized from listening to some of what I would say more pick-me-like content, that's not really my stick, but is that there is a problem, and Jason, you mentioned this, with women who want super, super high earners, which already are not going to be a whole lot of men, right? Men that literally do not need you to take care of anything, right? Not the situation where you guys both make maybe $200,000-$300,000 a year, but to get the nice house, like what Sean was saying, you both got to pitch in. And I think that kind of changes the dynamic when the man knows that the woman is going to work and her money is going to contribute some way, maybe not to shelter and things like that, but it's going to contribute. But when you're talking about a man that legit does not need your money at all, I've noticed that there is this situation, this may be like a divergent, you know, topic, of the boss chick, or what they call the modern boss chick that people talk about, who want these high earning men, but also want to work for their own protection, but also do not have the time, because they're working, to be the person in the house that they want them to be. That is a weird, sticky situation that I think a lot of people don't realize when they're searching for these men who do not need your money at all. When I mean like do not need, like you actually working is a detriment for them. And I see a lot of conversations about, oh, he should like me, I'm a business owner too, I'm this, I'm that, I'm providing. And they don't seem to understand that you being able to be a business owner and a boss chick is actually not a benefit to this man. It's actually a detriment, because you're not at the house doing things that he wants someone to do as a high earner that literally does not need your money. So I think, like you said, people, and what, like I said in the beginning, you need to have these type of conversations early on. And you may be better off in a situation if you're a woman like me who wants to work. I don't think there, maybe outside of kids in early stages, will it be a time that I won't be working. I think I am better off in a partnership where my husband wants me to work, he's going to work, and we all are pulling for a better goal, than to be chasing a man that literally makes $1 million, $2 million, who does not need my money. Because I know I will not be happy picking up my side of the 50-50 in the house, cooking and cleaning. That would not make me happy. So I think people kind of do need to be realistic about that as well. So I thought that was a really good point.
Thank you, Siwe. Yes, Nicole, you want to go for it?
Yeah, I did want to onto that too. Like I and like once again, the way you took it right in my mouth. I do notice that with women who make more, they do want men who make even more than or on the same level. And it is true. My dad said something to me some years ago, and I really didn't understand it until like I got older. He said a heterosexual male does not want to take care of another man. Um, so, and I think sometimes what we don't see is that with this money comes a certain attitude, right? You can say, oh, no, it doesn't happen. But I see it all the time, right? Whether it's men or women, um, the more money we make, the more of an attitude or an air that we have about ourselves. And unfortunately, we don't always know how to turn off that switch. And so if we're coming home to a man who has to have this attitude or has this attitude. I know one thing I did notice is that men, I'm not talking about like males. I'm about men know how to turn that switch on and off better than we as women. And so sometimes, and I would see this with my mom, right? She would come home and here she is, she's a manager over, 30 people, while my dad is managing, 300 people. And he's not coming home stressed out about whatever that at work, but my mom is coming home and she doesn't know how to turn that switch off. So now she's not only bossing us as around, she's talking to my dad in a certain way, and my dad is having to say, "Hold on, that's not going to work here." So you're either going to have to figure out how to turn this off when you come here, or I think should evaluate if you even need to be in those positions. And so I think that's where the other conundrum is, right? It doesn't, and I get it, right, ladies? We want to have a household. I get that. And I think most men are going to want their women to have a say, right? Most men who get married, who have common sense, are going to marry someone that they trust, someone that they look at as, you know what? I need to turn to my partner. I need to my wife and say, hey, what do you think about this? Um, but I think that's where the conundrum comes in for a lot of women who make, you know, good money. And it is just, it's just where we have to try to figure out, where do we fit? How do we want our lives? Um, do those men want us? And what will we have to put up with too? Like I'm not, me personally, I'm not putting up with some man like screaming and hollering at me and telling me that I need to go in there and do this. I'm not tolerating that. But I think that's where we do need to just kind of understand all of these things and how they factor in, if that's the type of life we want. Just saying.
Thank you, Nicole. Precious, welcome to the panel. Let us know your thoughts.
Hey, everybody. My thoughts are, it would be great if a man could pay 100% of all the bills. It sounds good. I think I was watching the interview. I think he was trying to come from more of a biblical standpoint of the divine order of everybody knowing their role and staying with their roles, which I like and I love. But we do live in a world where it takes a lot for just one person to make it. in this day and age. So I think we have to be a little bit more realistic about where it is, what we want, what it is we need from the other person. Like my first question is, hey, do you pay your bills on time? Because I'll know whether you could provide for me or not based on how you provide for yourself. I think that's a lot of things we don't have conversations about either, is what do your bills look like? How are you handling your finances? Because like I have aunt and uncles that have been married for over 40 years. And my aunt does not touch a load of laundry, but my uncle pays all those bills. He just prefers to do the laundry and iron her clothes for the week. So I think instead of saying who does what fits right for that particular relationship is the question people should be having amongst one another. That's it for me.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Any of the fellas want to jump back in? I would say that, I think also as well, UK and US, maybe we have, I don't know, maybe again, it's one of those things, like you said, something that's conversation on the ground is different from online. But I don't know, if it feels a little bit like, and maybe I'm being a bit short-sighted, it feels a bit different in the UK. Like I know we're kind of coming around to some of the stuff that how the US talk about this financial aspect, but I don't know, I feel like almost as a given, especially if you live in London, that chat about wanting all your bills paid, it gets real quick when you realize, because I think even at least for the US people, like you guys, your limitations in terms of how much you earn is completely different to ours, right? We I don't want to say we have a cap, but it's a cap. Like you get to 50 plus, you winning. You know what I'm saying to you? Like you really winning. You get to 50K, you win in the UK. Okay. Apart from unless you work in tech or whatever, it's hard to touch that 6 figures. Right. So you start making 80 bags a year, you're winning. You are, I think 80K in the UK at the moment is top 5%, not even 10, it's top 5. If maybe slightly less than that. So we have a completely different market as well. Also, and if you're in US, you know this as well, especially if you're like a nurse or something like that, you're an RN, kind of person. If you're in the nursing or the medical field, you'd be easily hitting 6 figures, right? You come to UK, you're gonna get a third, not even half, a third. Like when you convert it, stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? If you run it, I talked to my friend about, she was telling me about her consultancy and the difference in wage structure compared to US and UK. And it's almost like 20, 30K extra. So the differences that take place in UK and US can be very different as well. So I don't know if we have a different conversation oftentimes, because like you live in London, buying a house, especially in the inner parts of London, at least, is very difficult, and it takes 2. Like you are not going to buy a house by yourself. Like forget it. And even when it takes 2, you probably are on a help to buy scheme where the government maybe even help you a little bit. It's not easy to do unless you're moving outside of London. So that's also another thing as well, that plays a part. But when any of the fellas want to jump back in and have a say on this and provide their perspective.
I just want to know if y'all eggs are $5, because the way our inflation hit, I mean, maybe 80K is top 5%, but I don't know if you were in the grocery store codes when you were around, but that's not gonna cut it.
Facts.
Hey, you $5.
Like
where you getting that from, Seaway?
These
our
eggs,
grocery bill.
it's crazy.
That's cheap.
I went and
Yeah,
got
our
5
grocery
things.
bill. We live in Chicago, and my grocery bill for 1 week is like $300 and something, and that's not even like 2 bags sometimes of groceries. That's like proteins and like fresh vegetables, and I can put that all in like 1 bag almost.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is.
It's crazy to me.
You need to come to UK. You need to come to UK. I mean,
y'all want us to pay all the bills? We can't even get 2 bags.
It used to
Look,
be
I
cheaper to buy
said
groceries.
it takes 2. I said it's in this
I
day
know
and
you did.
age, it takes 2.
Them eggs gonna break your bank account, boy. Gonna cause a lost argument in your relationship. Yes, Jason, you want to say something? Go for it.
Yeah, I think you made a good point, Coach. It's relative, because now some of the conversations in the UK, when you ask a woman, what is like the minimum in terms of if a man was not going to make any more? Of course, they do want men to make more, but if he wasn't going to make any more, what do you want him to be on? And usually the figure would be around 50K, which is the top 25% in the UK. Next, I'll probably say 60K is around the top 10%. So yeah, our economies are completely different in what we can afford, what we can buy. I mean, eggs in the UK, definitely not £5, definitely not $5, but maybe £3, something like that. So things are getting expensive. But it also depends on where you live. So this is, to me, this goes back to having a conversation with that person that you're dating, that you're with, or that you're married to. What are the expectations? What do you want to do? Because in order to get that particular lifestyle, let's say for us, we might have to move outside of London and go to the outskirts. I don't even know how to equivalent it to the US, but live outside of the inner city, where it's more expensive. Simply because so if you want a lifestyle, that means maybe you want a better house, but we also need to move further away from family, further away from the city, etc. So some of these compromises need to be made. It's yeah, just the difference between the salary structures and even what you can actually do to actually get those salaries is not easy at all. But I guess that brings us to the conversation where a lot of people have decided to become entrepreneurs, have side hustles, have different things going on, so at least the money starts getting bigger. But you'd be surprised, a lot of couples are doing it together. It's not just the weight, it's not just on the man. In order to get that, whatever goal they have, a lot of couples are saying, let's do it together. I mean, even there's I can't remember her name, but I think it's the wealthy college kid. She's someone in America that consistently promotes Amazon FBA and things like that, right? I remember her on a podcast saying, although she's made $1 million, she's happy to teach her man how to do that. Her man's a rapper anyway, but teach her man how to do that so they can both make that. But then she's happy to step back while he's doing that because she wants to be the housewife. That's what keeps her going. That aim of, I would love to just do that. I don't need to do business if my man is doing A. So yeah, it just goes back down to communication and what you actually want. What you actually want to do. In fact, she even goes on to say the type of man that she wants is a man who carries a gun and knows how to use a gun. That's because of how she needs to feel protected. So, the world we live in is very different to where our parents grew up in, to what our grandparents grew up in. So I do agree that things need to be adjusted, but you need to communicate that. Stop all the anger, just communicate. This is what I want, and just be okay if it doesn't come. And you have to wait.
Can I add something else though? And I'm not trying to attack the men, but what I do notice is that there also seems to be a lack of drive.
Mm.
And I'm noticing a lot, especially in the Black community, there's just a lack of drive with our men, where it's like, I want these things, I want the baddie, I want this, but you don't want to work to get these things. Like, just being realistic. Um, you want the chick that's a 10 in the face, a 10 in the body. You want her to, listen to everything that you have to say. You want her to obey. You want her to submit. But you don't understand that there are things that come along with that. And let's be honest, money, your financial status comes along with that. Financial status comes along with, unfortunately, even the amount of respect that you get from your peers, your fellow, men. And I just noticed there just seems to be a lack of drive. Whereas I can see a Black woman over here who is like, yeah, I'm a hairstylist, I'm an accountant, and I have Airbnbs, right? And
Mm.
it's like, you ask the guy, what is he doing? He's like, yeah, I'm the grocery store bagger, but I need to have that girl over there. It's like, wait, what are we doing? Why isn't there a drive to become the provider? Nobody's saying, and I think if there was just more drive to say, I want to be the provider, I think more women would be actually willing to say, okay, I wherever you aren't able to, pick up, I'll pick up right here. Wherever you leave off, I'll pick up here. But I just think because there's just a lag, why would I'm just saying this as somebody, I'm married, but why would I want to sign up for that? Just saying.
I'll just quickly
No,
go on, Coach.
I actually get that, Nicole. I do understand that as well, and I can see your perspective on that. I guess I take a different angle and say that I don't know if there is a lack of drive, but I wouldn't say that it's. I don't want to say it's a general thing, and I'll tell you why I don't think it's a general thing. And I think I've said this before. The reality is we are now in a generation where women have come into the workspace. This wouldn't be a conversation 60, 70, 80 years ago because many of you wouldn't have been working. The reality is that when women come into the workspace to work, they get to change the dynamic of what they expect their life to be. So now those men who are making the average salaries, they're getting pushed out the market. Now, they got two choices, those men. You get up and you move forward and you do your best to increase your financial income, or so excuse my English here, you get to run of the litter. You can't complain. You know what I mean? No offense, that man. It's meant in general terms, right? You can't complain about what you get. You know what I'm saying to you? So I think that as women have come into a workspace, and I know someone said women have always worked, they haven't always worked in this capacity where they're able to earn so much. The earning potential has completely changed. It means that now, because some women have come into that space, you need more of those men also now to bridge that gap as well. So yes, part of it is there are men who are lacking drive. I do agree with that. And there's also another aspect, which is, there are women out here who have now joined and increased their financial ability, and that has also changed their expectation. Because imagine if you earn 0 and a man earns 40K, you're gonna be okay. You don't earn anything. But if you earn 40K, as we know with women hypergamously, and I don't think anything's wrong with that, you're not really wanting. I'm not saying you won't, but I'm saying there's gonna be a lot more women who are gonna be like, he's on 40K. I mean, maybe he can get. I need a man who's on 60K, right? So I think that also changes the market as well. So I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you, Nicole, at all. I do take into account that there needs to be more drive and a push for men, especially going into higher education, university, stuff like that. That may be more of a US thing. I don't know the stats in UK, but maybe again I'm being biased. I had too many black boys in my year, in my generation, who were going to university. We were all going. You know what I mean? We were all taking ourselves there. But I do take into account your point, Nicole. Jason, go for me. Then Ludwig wants to say something, so go for it.
So,
and then Sean, you can go after.
This goes back to what I was saying. It's just the society, well, what Seaway said, the society that we live in is different, and we need to really truly manage our expectations properly, because, what we are now, 100 years ago, we have to remember people married within their class. People were happy. I mean, the fantasy was always there, the marrying the prince or whatever for women. But women were generally happy to marry within their class. I guess the focus was on love rather than finance, especially because in terms of the money setup was really based on what her father had rather than what she went out there to do. And as we know, women couldn't own certain things, couldn't own houses on their own, and etc. Then obviously with the suffragettes movement, we all know what that is. And then World War II happened, where that was put on hold, and a lot of women went into the workplace to replace the men who were out there fighting a war. And slowly over time, more and more and more and more and more women went into the workplace. So naturally, we understand if when a woman has upped her levels, she's going to want better things, right? She does, as we always hear, she wants the same or more. But we have to adjust what that actually means economically, because life is just different. So yeah, to me, again, I just wanted to say that, just again, for me, I'm tired of the anger, the arguing, and because we're talking about that particular man, I can't remember his name, but that just, to me, that is just someone in the way he's speaking that's adding to that. Is creating triggers, which is unhelpful to any of us here. So to me, it just goes back to, okay, how do we uplift ourselves as a community? How do we put ourselves in a financial position that we need to be? Because we talk about other communities, what they're doing in terms of how they bring their money together, what they're able to own, and we understand that as Black people, we are lacking far behind. But we're getting there. I mean, on a fast pace, we are really moving forward. But yeah, I just think the way we need to deal with these things need to be different. And yeah, it's going to take time to get there. But yeah, man, let's stop fighting.
I I definitely agree with both of you all, and I do appreciate hearing that part because I do agree with the whole class thing, right? I've said this before that I think part of the issue with some women wanting more of the just things, right, more materialistic things, is because we see these things on IG, social media, right? It's kind of like the thing that I see often where I'm like, why is the grocery bagger wearing 30-inch bundles? They're like, well, Beyonce wore it, right? Beyonce is Beyonce. But I I still think there I still think that overall there does seem to be a lack.
Oh, did we lose her?
Yeah.
I think we lost her. She'll come back in a second. Ludwin, go for it.
All right, can you guys hear me? Do I sound far away?
Is it me? Maybe I feel like it cuts out a little
Can you
bit,
guys
but
hold on. How about now?
come close to the mic, Ludwin. Yeah, we can hear you. You're good now. Yep.
Okay. I had the phone connected to my car, but anyway, so I want to make a couple points. One, I remember last year, this 50-year-old man tried to talk to me. We got on FaceTime once, and I realized that he lived with his mother. So I flat out told him after a while, I said, I don't want to deal with a man that live with his mama. And he immediately got offended. He called my phone trying to tell me, well, what you don't know is I take care of my mom because she's going blind, da da da. I own 3 homes. This is just temporary that I'm helping my mom out. I didn't want to hear any of that, right? So I said, well, when you met me, you found me at work, right? He said, yes. He was like, is that the only job you have? I'm like, no, I have 2 jobs. He was like, why do you have 2 jobs? I said, you should only have one. One job should be able to make enough money for you to support yourself. I said, well, I'm single. I don't have any children. So my extra time, I spend it on another job because I want to save money. And he thought that was the most far-fetched thing to say, to have 2 jobs. And I'm like, granted, yes, ideally you'd want a job to pay for all your bills. However, if I want to save money and I'm bored at home, I'm taking another job. I have nothing to do, right? And I think a lot of times with us, I want to say immigrants, we tend to be okay with overworking ourselves. That's why they be like Nigerians have the money because they work hard. So the idea of working 2 3 jobs is not a foreign concept, but I found that to be a foreign concept to a lot of African Americans versus us immigrants, right? And it's different to hear different cultures how they see working. And I think the idea where Nicole was saying earlier, was it Nicole or I think it was Precious? She was saying like they don't want to work hard, they just want to work one job while this woman has a job. She do hair, she sell lashes, she do a whole bunch of stuff just to make extra money, right? However, a lot of time when we meet men, they only have one thing that they do. In all my 20 years of living here in America, I have rarely met a man who said he had 2 jobs or he has this, he has this type of hustle on the side. It's always one thing. It's never something extra. And I'm not, downplaying them in particular if that's the choice they make. However, I cannot deal with a man like that who thinks, you know, you shouldn't be hustling to make as much as you can and save or put away for rainy days or save to travel, have that extra flexible room. Or even if you have to downsize temporarily to get your money up, work 2-3 jobs to make sure like you will never go back to your prior financial state. But it's really rare when I have conversations with people. Me personally, I was blessed. Well, not looking at that I'm blessed, but like when I was younger, my parents came here first. They left me in Haiti with my godparents. So for like about 6 years, I was raised with godparents who were entrepreneurs. My godfather owned a hardware store, and my godmother, she was my mom's best friend. However, like she was a pharmacist who opened her own little pharmacy. So I got a chance to grow around that energy. And then my parents are actual career people. My mom has stayed being a nurse, and my dad was a teacher in Haiti. However, when he came here, he started being a manager. So I got a chance to see both sides. I got a chance to see how that works. And for me, I chose to be an entrepreneur. So when I hear certain men don't want to work hard or like having that extra disposable income, it saddens me because as a woman, and even a black woman at that, I had too many things going against me. So for me to hear you complain about, oh my God, it's too hard, it's too much, I can't provide, I can't do 100 to 0, I think you're a loser, in my opinion, because there's like America has so many opportunities for people to make money. I refuse. I refuse to believe that you don't have the opportunities out here. There's no way immigrants can come here and get money and you cannot get money. I refuse. That's how I look at it.
Now, Ludin done opened up a whole can of worms in what she done said. But anyway, Sean,
Yeah, I'm just going to cover Ludwin here a little bit because I know you don't mean to set off any diaspora wars with that comment. And I just know you're not saying that Caribbean people work harder than African American people. I know you're not saying that. So I think that, really listen, it's about finding people who you're on the same page with. And when we run up against people, whomever they may be, that don't, that aren't in your range, we need to move on. So for men, we shouldn't be chasing rivers and lakes that we're not used to. And the same thing for women, because it can go either way. So that's what I think about that topic.
Appreciate that, Sean. Did you want to add anything else though, aside to what? Anything else? Is there anything else you want to address?
No, I really feel like ultimately when it comes down to this topic, it and this is kind of where we sometimes get divided. And I've even learned because Kojo, early in the week we had a great discussion behind the scenes with the ladies, Jay and Seaway. And I think what happens is, and our instinct, like when we hear like men are doing X, we want to start telling the women, well, women are doing this. And I think that's where we go wrong. When we start like calling people out and saying what they need to do, or we start saying, you're going to be single, you're never going to get a woman if, you're never going to get a man if, that's when the conversation goes left, or we start like kind of touching on little hot points. That's when it goes left. So I think in this instance, which is why, when Ludwin was making some of her commentary, the old me might have started to tussling, but I don't think that goes anywhere. It just becomes a tussle, right? Because then I'm going to tell her, well, I'm an African-American man and and my friends that are African-American, and this is what we've done. We're going to start laying down facts, and that's not necessary, because what happens is we wind up missing each other, because then she's going to want to defend, and we're not going to change anything. We're just going to play this back and forth match, right? Of who is right, who's wrong. So I think really what it is we need to be in our own lane. And sometimes men and women alike, we go in a lane we don't belong. Culture, we talk about this all the time, right? Whether that lane is we're up against a woman that really don't like us and we're not reading the room, but she's so fine that we just ignoring the signs and we're going after her. And she may give us a shot because we got a nice personality, or it looks like we got X, Y, and Z, but she really don't like us like that. And then we wind up in a situation where we're not really getting the respect that we want. That's something we shouldn't be doing. And then vice versa for a lady. If there's a guy, as much as you like him, if he's not financially going to do and provide the way you want him to provide, and men were not really that big of a mystery. Ladies, most of y'all know that. You can tell. We might even lie to you, but you know. And women's intuition is strong. You know. So just don't slide down the wall and convince yourself that you got somebody that's a provider when you know he's not, when his life doesn't reflect that, when the things that he does doesn't reflect that, when he hasn't shown you that he's not willing, ready, and able to provide for a family. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's where we need to stick in that place and align ourselves with people who have the same goals, whether it's 50-50, 40-20, 90-10, whatever your mathematics works out to be. You need to be with somebody that aligns with you and y'all are on the same page, because when you're off and you want this and you want to change her to that, or you want to change him to this, that's when you start having all these problems, and then we both sliding down the wall because we're not getting what we want.
Love that. Precious, go for it.
How do we get the unmotivated brothers motivated?
Good question. Solutions. I like it. I guess one of the solutions part of the conversation. Brothers. The question is towards you, brothers. How do we get the brothers motivated? Okay. All right. We don't want the media broke, as somebody would say. We need them to be making it. How do we motivate the black men in the community from your perspectives? If I can get like a minute answer from each person, you know, that'll be helpful. Jason, since your mic's open, go for it. A minute answer, please.
The men might not like what I'm gonna say, but ladies, you have to understand men. Don't date them. Stop giving them access to everything. Stop giving them access to your bodies. If you give a man complete access to you and he's giving you the bare minimum, or he is not what you need, or he's not enough, why is he going to change? Why is he going to do anything? Because he loves you? Come on. Like, he has to want that for himself. So if the question is, how can we? I would say it's not a job. It's not a woman's job to be part of that. Like, as men, we need to speak to each other, but as a man, we need to do for ourselves. But that's my short 1 minute answer. Stop, on your side of things, stop giving your guys so much of you that makes them feel like they're already enough. So why are they going to do more?
Appreciate that, Jeff.
Oh, I got a question though.
Oh, before you go, Pressure, I'm gonna get guys to go. I'm gonna get the guys to go first. Jeff, go for it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. What Jason said. Please do not waste your time upon people that are not willing to actually meet you in terms of your standards. Find someone that's complementary to you. Because at the end of the day, it's a waste of time, and then it becomes like a build a bear sort of mentality where you are hoping and praying this person's gonna change. Now, you can't expect people to change if they're willing to change themselves. So move on and find someone that's actually going to meet you where you want to be. That's it.
Beautiful. Let me change the question slightly for you, Sean. How do we get the men to, outside of women not choosing them, how do we get men to be motivated to want to improve their position in society, financially, mentally, spiritually, all that stuff? How do we get the black brothers specifically to improve and grow?
I don't know that you can do that if it's not in them to do that. I don't know that there's something you can get them to do. Now, I think whether it's conversations like this and having the right men in their household to give them advice and guidance, but yeah, I don't think you can really, if it's not in that. And there's some men, unfortunately, if it's just not in him, it's not in him. And if you see that inclination, as hard as it may be, is you might see a little potential in there. You got to move on, because the worst thing you can do, and this I know to be true 100%, is if there is a man that is not motivated, you can feel like you have the power to motivate him. Bad business. because two things can happen. One, on the upside, he might get motivated. But so often when that happens and a woman starts to motivate a man and drive him, once that man gets that power, he may not want her anymore. And also she feels a sense of entitlement to what she has provided to him. And then you still have an imbalance. So I definitely don't think it's up to women to try to motivate men at all. And I think you may have to leave most of those men by the wayside.
I want to say that to motivate men, I think first and foremost, education is the first and foremost thing. But before even education, I think those of us, and the difficulty behind this is safe spaces like this. It's important to see brothers doing well and see brothers who speak from an educated background and speak with poise and elegance. It does a lot for a lot of people, surprisingly, to see some kind of representation, first of all. I think a second thing also is harping on and talking about it, especially as men, about how important education is. And I'll tell you, education opens your eyes to different avenues, because it's the knowledge that allows you to be able to see the different avenues that are possible to you. Because outside of your actual God-given talents, the rest of you who are not God-given in your talents, you need knowledge. And that knowledge is what helps them to be able to navigate different paths. Those of us who had dreams to be a footballer, soccer player, basketball player, hockey player. Yeah, when you realize that your knee weren't holding up, your education kicked in, didn't it? So that's the whole point. So we need to be harping on these young men about how important education is, and the need to go and get it, because it opens up avenues in different ways that even I couldn't tell you how. But when the right time and right season comes along, you'll realize that your door will be open for you. And then I think, and I think again, and this is difficult again, but those of us who are already kind of in that space already, like you're saying, Jason, you're doing an initiative similar to that as well, is a reach back, kind of helping men have certain space. I know there's another person in UK, another pastor actually, who's doing his own thing, 412. They're doing their own thing where they encourage men to grow and to see things different ways. So things like that are important. But first and foremost, education is the one that separates a man and gives him the opportunity, because knowledge enlightens, and it gives you ability to access different paths in life as well. So I think that's the way we motivate the men. Jeff, you want to add something real quick? It'll be a quick minute, and I'm going back to Precious. See all the questions you want to ask.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I'll say, single talking about education, I think we should also educate the next generation of young boys. I think still men, but I think also have accountability partners and also have like peer mentors. I think a lot of times these men, they are in a negative feedback loop, that if they've never been exposed to an environment where they could see things different, like with education, they'll continue thinking that the way that I live is always going to be the way that I live, and then they won't have the incentive to change. But if guys are speaking life into them, maybe they will start to see things a little bit differently, and that could also boost up their self-esteem to actually try. So that's what I'll say to that.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Precious, you had a second question you want to ask. Go for it.
So if we are in a space where you say, hey, don't even entertain those dudes, where are the dudes that we can't entertain? I'm just asking.
Oh, my chest.
So
I hate this question. I really, really do.
Wait, so
I hate it.
I'll answer that. So this is a concern of mine, because my question is, what type of dudes are you attracting them? Because I'm surrounded by people who are doing amazing. So I can't have the mindset. I know there's a lot of nonsense that's going on. I'm not saying there isn't. I know there's a lot of men who are way below average when it comes to achieving their vision, their dreams, their purpose. I understand that. But there is also a crazy amount of men who are doing well. Things may differ depending on how well you want the man to do. But that type of point, I always have to ask the question, where are you going? Who are you attracting? Who are you giving your time to? Because I'm surrounded by guys who are doing all right. you know, guys who are married, guys who are in long-term relationships, or their fiance, for example. You know, I think I only have one single guy, you know, that's doing great. So unless we're going to say they're all taken, I don't know, but there's so many out there. But it depends on whether you want that particular person or you want a type of man. And unfortunately, that type of man continues to, I don't know, be below the bar. So that's my response to that.
Well, I live in the city where the ratio is extremely high. I live in Atlanta. So
Atlanta.
you know what I mean? So like I live in the A. So it's not a lot in that circle of men that are not already taken.
Okay,
You know
but
what I mean?
what do you want then? What's your levels? What, because we have to be quite direct. What is your level then? You know,
My level is basic, bro. Get up and go to work like I get up and go to work. Have a car, have some ambition, have a vision. Because if I'm a woman and trying to live my God purpose, if he doesn't have a plan, purpose, or vision, I'm useless for him. So I need him to at least have the bare minimum stuff. I'm requiring the bare minimum, bro.
They're not in Atlanta.
you know what? I don't agree with you. You actually said something that's amazing.
I mean, I hate to say this. I think a lot of times we move to Houston, Atlanta, even is going on in Charlotte. They're not there.
See,
they're just not there. I mean, this is from my personal experience. Only in Atlanta did I deal with like a two-timey married person who didn't tell me they were married. Like it's a whole thing.
Hallelujah.
And his whole aunties and uncles and cousins were lying for him. Only in Atlanta. I was like, I'm going home. I am getting out of here.
Wait, because I've been hearing some crazy stories in Atlanta. Like,
no, it was bad. Between that and the dudes who like, and then all the consultant bros, half of them are down low, running in the same circle. All of the different, they work for Triage, they work for Deloitte, all of them folks running in the same down low circle. Between them and the married dudes on the low, no. Atlanta's just not where it's at. So ladies, if you're in Atlanta, I recommend going to like maybe take visits to I don't know, somewhere else. Somewhere where they got some tech jobs, somewhere where they got some men of different colors. I don't know what to say, but they're not in Atlanta.
Wow.
I just want to give a disclaimer, Deloitte, just in case. We appreciate you and your business here. If you ever want to use this and sponsor me, listen, by all means, what Seaway said is our own opinion. Okay. I don't know if you've got download brothers in Deloitte. All I know is you're a good business for me. All right. So don't be afraid to reach out to me. Okay. All right.
What's Deloitte gonna do for you, Kojo?
I don't know.
They may analyze his books and come up with a way for him to maximize his business. Don't count him out.
That's right.
Don't count him out. They may feature him on the next commercial. Don't you count him out. Don't block his blessings.
My bad. I just know what I seen.
Is it really that bad?
No, it's that bad. It's that bad.
It is extremely bad. Like it be more married dudes trying to approach single women than anybody.
Yeah, I think quiet as it's kept. That's the bigger epidemic in Atlanta is the married dudes. The married dudes in Atlanta, because if you think about it, like a lot of dudes are only as faithful as their options, and like there's a lot of dudes who would be faithful if they could live like a little wholesome life somewhere. But in Atlanta, like it's just too many options for regular dudes. It's just too many options.
I
like if you got your man, you better put him up and hide him for real.
I like to say a lame can come to the A and be a total winner. Like he really could. Like be a winner.
You tripping. A lame dude. You
a lame dude.
Listen, I ain't gonna lie to you. It was, yes, Missy Callow. I hope I'm always killing people's names. I do apologize.
Yeah, Mr. Callow, you got it right.
Missy Callow. Okay, fantastic. Oh, am I hearing British?
Yeah, that's what I thought. I need to jump on and explain how things are in London, like for us girls. Because I'm hearing a lot of American. The way they live is definitely not the same as us. The reason why I wanted to jump on, because Kojo, you made a good point when you said a lot of your friends, like, they went to university, like, same with me, I guess. A lot of my friends that went to university, a lot of them are not making even 40K. But a lot of white people that I know that went the same university as me are making around 50K. So we need to look at the UK. It's a bit different from America. So I feel like there's already barriers put in place in the system for a lot of black men to even reach 60K. So it's really hard. It's so hard where my husband has given up and he found a solution for us as a family. He's building 2 homes back home in my country from scratch because he knows he can't build 2 houses in London or in the UK. It's impossible for him because the system's already designed in a certain way. Maybe for him, he would have stayed on 40K. To get to 80K, he don't know when that will be. And I feel like, I don't know how it is in America, but here in London, and we live in London, we got our own house. Even how we bought this house in London was a struggle. It was a struggle. So it wasn't like he wasn't motivated. He's a very motivated person, like hardworking. That's why he decided to build 2 houses in my country to try and bring more income coming in the UK, because he knows it's so hard. Like, I wrote a dissertation on diversity and inclusion in my human resources management and my master's. And a lot of companies now are promoting diversity and inclusion in their companies. But if you go in their companies, the CEOs, chairmen are all white. But they are promoting diversity and inclusion. So what is the problem there? Are they just putting on a facade, a face for us that diversity is important, but they're not acting on it? Like, that's what I'm trying to say, is like this 50-50. If in the UK, if a man is doing 50-50 and he can do more, but he can't because of the system, that's what we need to look at. For me, it'll be a problem if a man can do more, but he decides to do 50-50, but he can do more. Like my husband, sometimes it came a point in his life, he had to do 50-50. Before he was doing a lot, but he had to do 50-50 because everything went up. The salary is not going up, but he's still on the same salary, but he has to do 50-50, but he wants to do more. So we just have to look at the system in place. Is it pushing black men to do more? Is it pushing black women to do more? Or is it keeping us in the same level? And then the Caucasian and the white people are doing more than us. Because a black person can get a first in their masters and a white person can get a first in their masters or a third in their masters, for example, but they're achieving more than a black person. I've seen it a lot. Like most of my friends, they got a first. I don't know how they say in America, but we say as a first or a distinction now. But they're not doing well, but they're so smart. But what is it that they're not doing? That's what I don't understand. What is it that they're not doing and the white people are doing that they're doing better, even if they fail? Like, I don't understand. Can somebody explain this to me? Is it just the system they put in place? So that sometimes like I was saying, we don't need to look at motivation. We don't need to look at a black man don't want to work 2 jobs. We need to look at, even if a black man is working 2 jobs, what is it in the system is there to support a black man to not work 2 jobs, to work 1 job that is earning enough to support himself and his family?
Thank you for that,
That's
Missy.
why I wanted to say that.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, listen, look, we can talk about, the systematic racism that exists that prevents us from necessarily climbing in droves. In terms of obviously that as well. I think the UK market is very different to the US market, right? In terms of our financial abilities, because like you mentioned about the 40,000, I'll be honest with you, that's good money.
It's good
and the rest
money,
of us
yeah.
are making more than 40K. We are blessed because 60K is 10%. It's the top 10%. So it's a complete difference from US to UK. And of course, yes, we know that US have different things that take expenses wise. But that's why the conversation, like I said, oftentimes the conversation offline is completely different. I think Siwe said this as well. Some of the ladies said as well. The conversation offline is very much more different because when you talk to somebody, and most of us who live, especially how finances work. For instance, in UK, why it's so different to US is that if you go to New York, you got Chicago, you got LA. My geography is very bad about US, but you know what I mean. You got Atlanta. You know, you got major cities that you can earn six figures and beyond easily. In fact, I think I just Emily sent me something about the different states that have the average salary on each particular state, and all the states the average salary is higher than the UK. So like that, so their ability to have a much larger scale when it comes to earning income, they have different hubs. Where in UK it's like if you don't live in London, and unless you've got a job that's remote, and unless you're a doctor, a tech, you know, those kind of jobs there, it's gonna be very difficult for you to get over 40 to 50K. If you do earn over that, God bless you, because like you've managed to break.
That's
You know
so
what I
right,
mean?
Kojo.
That's difficulty there, yeah.
Very, very difficult.
Yes, yeah. But I don't know if Jason could add to that. They're from your area.
I was gonna add to something else, but I don't know if they're gonna pop in.
Oh, you want to say go for it, see when, then I'll get the boys to jump in. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think when we're talking about just like action items and things to do, when I hear these conversations, I think this is a very positive way we're having it. And this is kind of why I love this convo and not how it typically goes, because at the end of the day, systematic racism and just the way things are going in both the UK and America is doing a number on Black men. And on top of what you already said, Kojo, women just entering the workforce in general. And I mean, I'm looking at just in my kind of universe of looking at the med school classes and the law school classes, and they're like 70% women, 30% men, right? And that's becoming a problem. So, I mean, what can we do with men our age? What can men do with men our age? I don't know. I think like Sean said, you know, you try to build up a man too much, he may resent you for it. Maybe men can talk men to men about encouraging men to do, you know, more or achieve more if they kind of miss both as the kid. But even your ways that your brain develops, like you do a little bit more, but I think the key is mentoring down. We have a whole issue right now with single parent households in the Black community that we seem to glorify and think that it's cute. And I'm not saying that I don't know how to fix that, but at least if you see a child that's raised in a single parent household, you know, be a mentor to that child, push education at minimum. You can push being a business owner, teach our Black boys that sports aren't everything, have other skills, have other jobs. You can play football, basketball, but you need to do other things. I think we have to turn the tide of what's happening right now, and we definitely can't do that by arguing with each other. Like, that's not going to work. And then, I mean, I want to say Black women support Black men, but I'm seeing also the highest earners in our community, which unfortunately, outside of the exception, are basketball players and football players, statistically are highly dating outside of their race, which I'm not trying to take it there, but that's also another issue that's going on that people don't want to talk about. I mean, there's a lot of issues going on. And I'm not saying that the doctors, lawyers, accountants, businessmen are doing that, but I'm talking about the highest earners in our community, which are unfortunately musicians, basketball players, and football players. We also see what's going on there. And that's a reality, and it's not fake, it's real life. So I think we really got to do something to invest in our Black men. And I think Black men have to invest in Black men, and it starts young. I don't know what to do about our current generation, but we got to look back and pull them up, because I'm seeing a lot of women talking about there's nobody to date. It's really because there's hardly nobody to date. Like, the actual men that are capable of allowing a woman to be hypergamous are limited. So then you have men preying on women on the internet, telling them they need to be X, Y, and Z, competing over scraps when there's very minimum. And then if you tell Black women to divest or to also look outside of their race, then you're being problematic. But no, you're really just being realistic based on our situation of what's before Black women. But the answer is not turning on each other, calling each other Pookie and Ray Rays, doing this and that, because the facts are the facts. And the more Black women continue to outpace and out-earn Black men, as long as we still want Black men, we still have an issue. It's a major issue. We can be boss girls and girls all we want, but if we still want Black men, it is in our best interest to also want them to do better and to not be, going after them on the internet. It's not helping. So I love this conversation, and I really hope that, all the Black men on this panel, I don't know what you're already doing to mentor young Black boys and high school students, and even young men in their 20s who are still capable of kind of making a different decision. I think that's how we turn the tide to fight collectively what's going on with our community, because we need each other, and we have to do better together, and we have to earn together. We can't do it by ourselves. So I just kind of wanted to add that.
That was beautiful, CY.
Amen.
Not amen. Now I get the chance to be the deaconess.
That's it. You came in and delivered. Anybody, Jay, you got anything?
I disagree with Seaway, man. I do think this conversation, do you know what? I like it when we have positive conversations on this channel. It doesn't even matter if we don't agree or if we have slightly different experiences or views. I think just having a conversation and where we always end up, I think that's beautiful and it's healthy. And it's just too bad a lot of the other platforms, I was going to say can't do this, but some don't even want to do this. They want to create the controversy, put out there the hot takes. And it's sad because I see we're saying we're teaching the younger generation, we're teaching people, and this is what it's about. This is what we're supposed to do. Most of us are Christians, and we know the word tells us to, what are we giving the next generation? And a lot of us are giving the next generation poison. So this is where it starts. So, I appreciate each and every one of you. And in regards to Kojo highlighted it and Seaway touched upon it as well. For me personally, my ministry is called Kingdom in Need of God. The acronym is KING, right? And it's a men's ministry where I'm teaching men these very things. One of the things that my pastor said to me, sometimes not even about money, but it's just about life. Some of these men don't even have a life to even start about or thinking about achieving and purpose. So where do we start on the ground up? Sometimes it could be men who have been in the criminal justice system. I work for the financial regulator in the UK, and I'm trying to start a men's network there too. And I have made it very clear, this network is not to try and put men in the spaces that they already are in to the detriment of women who are not in those spaces. This is simply about addressing things that men need to deal with, such as our mental health, such as, divorce or miscarriage, how things affect us, so that we can be better as men. So these things are happening. There are key people in certain spaces, but at the moment, it's not the most popular thing to do. As we know, women are great at coming out, starting women movements. Because of what women have been through, women are great at coming together, supporting it, marketing it, and just being a part of it. It's amazing. As men, eventually we will get there, but there is a starting point, and at least we're having a conversation, So I'll leave it as that.
I think that's so beautiful what you're doing, and I think we just need to make it cool for more people to be doing that. Am I breaking up, guys? Can you hear me?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that needs to be the new wave. Like, what are you doing to even be present in your community? Like Jason, what you said, like you being present, not only just what you're doing, but them seeing you is sometimes all the spark that folks need to know, like, hey, I can really change, I can really do something different. Or just talking about like what you guys deal with and that's so important. And I do agree that women are good at that, and we kind of collectively know how to bond together. But I think men need more of those spaces to kind of talk about, maybe why a lot of men are not picking these routes, or why they feel like all they can do is sports and not these other cool career avenues. Maybe they're just not seeing it. And in my community, I see, a lot of y'all know, but I run a not-for-profit, I Am Able Law. and I really focus on both girls and boys in the Black and Hispanic community and trying to build them up. Like that's my thing, right? But I just think you don't have to have your own nonprofit. You could be helping out. You can be around. You can do anything just so these, especially these boys, so they see it. Because us girls, we're raised so tough. It doesn't seem like people coddle us, you know? Nobody coddled me. I feel when I see memes where I say like the firstborn girl is raised like the hardest dude around, I feel like so many of us women are raised like we just gotta get it and we gotta go. And I think that sometimes makes us kind of hard sometimes, and not the fit, feminine, submissive, whatever body, you know, says they want, which whatever, right? I think a lot of times these boys are being lost. They're not getting that, and the women are getting the pressure, and with pressure makes diamonds, and that's why we're coming out so strong. But it seems to be kind of a lack of pressure, lack of guidance with these young boys, and then we wonder why when they come out in their 20s they can't handle it, and then they're taking different paths that aren't constructive. I really hope, and if that's something that comes from this conversation, like any guy listening to this, be like, what's a young boy I can take out to lunch tomorrow? That would be beautiful, because that's so important. That's so important.
Yeah, I think those are all, I think those are great things to do for future generations, and helping those coming up. And I think just unfortunately, some men have used their platforms not for the best intentions, but for those platforms like this, I think where men can come up and talk about things and kind of go through what are some things or challenges that we have, and then at times obviously talk to women and where women are actually hearing us out. I think those are important spaces too, because they allow us to really get on the same page. Because in certain instances, like a group of guys, we can get together and we could talk, and we'll probably all share a similar sentiment, as women will do the same. But like, we need to have those conversations just like tonight, where we're able to come together and then say, hey, like, this is what I think, this is what you think. Now, how do we merge it and build it together? So as much as the independent development needs to happen, I think it's also important that we listen to each other, right? If I'm talking and I'm sharing my experience, don't dismiss my experience, or don't tell me, well, this is what I deal with, right? And then the same thing vice versa, from men to women. When women are speaking, right, don't disqualify what we're saying. So I think when we can have good conversations together and be able to communicate together, right, not just talk at each other, but communicate together, that's going to help for the success of our relationships. Because more often than not, you'll find what exists and what you want is there, but it's how you're going about getting it and how you cultivate and develop the relationship. So that kind of answers your question a little bit, Precious, is that there are good Black men here, right? Whether it's this panel, whether it's in your nearby vicinity, but it's about how we find togetherness and how we cultivate the relationship the right way and do what works for us, not what somebody says we should be doing, not because somebody said we shouldn't be doing 50-50, right? But be doing what works together for the betterment of that relationships.
I just want to add a perspective as well, right? When it comes to, I guess, a man's influence. So earlier I said, there is, like, men generally know they need to achieve. Whether they're able to do is a different conversation. But what we've seen with the Andrew Tate followers, what we've seen with Fresh and Fit followers, is regardless of how you feel about them, the droves of men who have, navigated towards these platforms and are listening at tender hooks to what they say. The key thing that makes these guys successful is what most men grow up trying actually understanding, is that our success can directly correlate to the type of woman that we may be able to get to respect us, at least, or surround us. But when you use that as an angle, it's not the most healthy, which is why I said earlier, when it comes to ladies, the bit that you can do is to stop entertaining, men who are just below caliber. Because these men, because our success is correlated, immaturely can be correlated to, two women. If a man is able to get you, to me, sometimes I say the most precious thing you can give a man is access to your body. That's your prized possession. That's your womb. You're potentially going to attach yourself to him for life, and you're giving it to him and he's a bum. I mean, it's only the desire, the love aspect that you might feel he's gonna do this for me, he's gonna do that for me. We know it doesn't work that way. A man has to want that for himself. So this is where, as men, as we come in and say, bro, regardless of whatever woman, you need to do this for yourself. There is a mandate on your life to provide, to financial safety, different things. And I think that's where we need to move as a society, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to, I always speak about it, but I'm not trying to attach what I do to women. Although as a man, I understand the correlation. I understand what women want in these men, which is why we're having this conversation. But I just acknowledge why certain things ain't popular in the world today. It is what it is, but we will get there. And sometimes I just want to, grab people. The young men stop me on the street, right? Sometimes, and just randomly ask me questions. So sometimes I feel like the social media aspect is great, but privately in our own lives, like Siwe is saying, that's where we get along a lot of the impressionable young men and young women, because we're walking past them thinking maybe things are not that deep, but when we hear their conversations and what they're worried about, to them, what's happening on social media is real life. It's everything. This is what it's going to be, and it is causing a lot of problems. So us who are older, we still have a job to do to actually say, yo, young man, young woman, this isn't real life. This is maybe a small section of whoever, but let me give you the game. Let me give you an understanding. Let me actually show you what you can do. These are the things to me I'm passionate about anyway.
You said a word, because I think you said kind of the part that people don't want to talk about. It's like, well, maybe we can't fix everything, right? We can work on the generations behind us. But as women, I say this on this channel all the time, and I think sometimes people don't understand how I be saying it. But us women, we have the final say about how we're treated in this society and what we're going to tolerate. That's not to say that we're going to end with our knight in shining armor, but we definitely have control over, being with someone that's not worth our time. And the amount of women in this generation that I see who we're talking about 50-50. So let's bring it back to that, who accept 50-50 and don't want it. Have kids for a man, literally putting your life on the line for a man that literally may not even show up to the birth of your child, doesn't want to take care of you, your child, doing wifely duties for men that don't even want to claim you, like things like that. When you bend your standards on things in the beginning, you're not requiring men to have any type of standard for you. And I think that's really important. So until men need to talk to men, right? You guys talk to each other, and talking to women, what can we do? You have to really make your standards clear and don't bend them. And definitely don't bend them about things that you're not going to be happy with at the end of the day. Like, you have the final say on what you allow. And it's okay to have those standards, because quiet as is kept, men respect those standards. They act like they say, oh, I want the girl that want to run my bath water and massage my feet. They want the woman that has a standard and a value system. I'm not saying you can't do that too, but you need to know who you are and what you'll tolerate. And the type of stuff that I see us doing in this generation for men that have not proven that they deserve it at all really leads us into the situation that we're in. I also think that's coupled with the fact of lack of good options, which is what I talked about previously, and how we can look out for the next generation to try to ensure that there are better options for our kids and our kids' kids. But at this rate, what you can do is to have standards and stick to them and don't bend them. Because being a pick-me ain't going to get you nowhere. But heartache. It's going to get you heartache. You can't do it. So.
Pastor Seaway.
I knew you were going to find a way to get pick me in there, Seaway. I knew it.
Because I secretly think pygmies are the root of all evil. Like, I just
You think that's the answer, right? That's the downfall. We be in a better place.
If you think about it though, right? You think it's a joke, but I really do think the pick-me's are the root of all evil, right? Because if we know, and y'all men ain't gonna like this, but if you know that men just don't be right, period, right? Like men just be having issues, men gonna be men, okay? If there's women who had standards, right, and they required men to step up and be the men that they should be, it would work if there weren't pick-me's picking up the scraps. The reason why it doesn't work is because when women have values, there's always the next woman talk about, she just didn't know how to do that for him. I'm gonna run his bathwater and cook his food. Oh, she wasn't making a nice home. I'm gonna keep a nice home. He ain't gonna cheat on me, and then be in the exact same situation. So that's why I be harping on the pick-me. So I'm like, y'all don't get it. Like, you guys, if we stood together, men would be required to do better. But because y'all don't require crap, we don't get crap. And then it messes up the women with values. That's why I'm on the pick-me's head every single time I'm on here, because I need them to understand they're holding everybody back by having no values and trying to pick up the scraps from the next woman.
We're gonna let you have that.
That was everything. I used to call them freebies, but I like pick-me's better. I think what we as individuals have to really understand what it is we want for ourselves. That's what it all boils down to. Because when you know your worth and you know what you really want for yourself, you'll pick better. You'll do better. You'll surround yourself around better people. So at the end of the day, I love these conversations because we get to see so many different perspectives and different thought patterns of how we all think. And it just pulls it all together, and we can help each other become better versions of ourselves. So I love the platform.
Well, I think we are rounding out towards the end, and our dear brother Kojo, just as he was told very earlier, us men need to have multiple jobs, so he is working on his other job. So we're gonna ask for any final comments from anyone on the panel as we prepare to close tonight.
No, I think we're good for your benediction.
Anyone else? Precious, Nicole, Jace?
No, I'm good.
I think
I'm good.
we've
Y'all
all
said it
picked
all.
up. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen.
How
That's
you gonna
right.
benedict
My other
this?
job is the panel. That's my second job right now. So I'm gonna have 2 or 3 by the time the year is over. Y'all just watch. But no, it was a great discussion tonight, and I think we showed that we are prepared for the mantra for 2023, because we didn't have to tear down any walls here. Tonight we just had a very good conversation that was building, and I think that's the most important thing about relationships, right? The title is, is 50-50 wrong? If a man can't pay all the bills, he shouldn't be dating. But if 2 people shouldn't be, or aren't on the same page, they shouldn't be together, right? And if a man can't communicate with his woman and get on the same page with his woman, then he shouldn't be with that woman. I think that is the answer to the question, because the percentage and the math is going to be different for every couple, and it is okay. There is no set number or percentage. If we go by the Bible doesn't say a percentage, right? It says provide, but it does not give us the specifics. It gives us the room to do so, right? And the room to manage that together as a couple united with God, right? And we know that our Lord and Savior, for those of us that are believers, he died, right, to abolish the law, and so that we live by the Spirit and not the letter of the law. So sometimes in our relationships, it's the letter of the argument. It is the letter of the law that can tear us down. So don't let the letters of the law tear you down, but be united by the Spirit, right? And come to God first and guidance, and look for guidance in what works best for your relationship, and listen to one another. That is the most important thing. So again, everybody in the audience, all the panelists, thank you so much for your contributions tonight. I think we had a wonderful, spirited discussion, and hopefully this can push us forward to have greater conversations and greater and better relationships. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.